Faites appel, s'il vous plaît, monsieur le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen. Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député Labby.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublé. Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves.
Présent.
Madame le député Gardner. Monsieur le député Gorst.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le député Moore. Monsieur le député Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ozef. Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré. Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howe.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Curtis.
Présent.
Madame le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Wilson. Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le greffier.
Prions Dieu. Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent et de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toutes leurs délibérations étant accompagnées de ta bénédiction réussissent au bien et au soulagement du peuple qu'il t'a plu de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant « Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite dans la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous induis point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi est le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen. Madame la connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Défaut.
Madame la connétable de Saint-Martin.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Madame la connétable de Saint-Martin est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas résister aux états sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
The connétable present on the, but he's not answering. He may not be at the machine. Defo.
Monsieur le Deputy Southern.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Thadier. Madame le Deputy Doublé.
Present.
Madame le Deputy Gardner.
Sir, Deputy Gardner is attending a hospital appointment out of the island, and could she be excused, please?
Yes. Excusez.
Monsieur le Deputy Ozef.
Deputy Joseph being marked excused.
Yes, please, sir.
Les États sont constitués. I'd like, on behalf of members, to welcome His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor to the Chamber this morning. There is nothing more under A. Under B, there are a number of subordinate enactments, and under C, a number of matters have been presented or laid as described on the consolidated order paper. We come to notification of lodged propositions. Rent control measures P18 amendment lodged by Deputy Mesick of St Helier South. Draft stamp duties and fees amendment of law number 6, Jersey regulations P22 lodged by the Chief Minister. Draft domestic abuse Jersey law 2002 appointed day act P23 lodged by the Minister for Home Affairs. And draft social security amendment of law number 18 Jersey regulations lodged by the Minister for Social Security P24. There is nothing under E. We come to F, appointment of ministers. And there is a nomination of the Connétable St Mary as a member of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. Deputy Luce.
Thank you, sir. It gives me great pleasure to inform the Assembly of the nomination of the Constable of St Mary to the Scrutiny Panel for Environment, Housing and thank you, sir.
Is the nomination seconded?
Sir.
Are there any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, then I accordingly declare that the Connétable St Mary has been appointed as a member of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel.
Sir, before proceeding further, if I may, do we have a consolidated order paper yet? I don't.
It has been circulated by teams. I have one, which I suppose is fairly important, but I'm not sure if everyone else has a... Yes. Greffier, could we arrange for some hard copies to come into the chamber? Or we'll arrange for that. Come now to questions. Obviously, there are a number of answers to written questions have been tabled. Going now to oral questions. And the first oral question, Deputy Farnham will ask of the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister state how many tax-paying married couples and civil partners have voluntarily elected for independent taxation from the year of assessment 2023, and what percentage of all tax-paying couples this represents? Thank you, sir.
So I wonder if I could ask Deputy Miller to answer this question as she is bringing forward this legislation. Thank you.
Yes, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for his question. For the pilot group in the year of assessment 2022, 121 couples elected to be taxed independently. Eligibility to make this election was restricted to a small pool of couples who had already elected to be separately assessed. For the year of assessment 2023, a further 282 couples made the election. The deadline for electing for the year of assessment 2024, which may still be made on a voluntary basis, has not yet passed, but 60 elections from couples have been received to date. It's important to remember that in addition to these volunteer couples, since 1st January 2022, independent taxation has been mandatory for all couples who have married since then, some 405, and all married couples who have arrived in Jersey as married couples, which are 98. In total, therefore, there are 966 couples taxed independently, representing around 5% of married couples in the tax system.
Can I thank the Assistant Minister for her answer, sir, and ask if she knows why such a low number of married couples and civil partnership couples have actually elected voluntarily to go on to independent taxation. So the states approved the principle some time ago, and it's been broadly advertised. I wonder if she would have any idea as to why there's such a low take-up.
Minister?
Thank you, sir. I'm afraid I don't know why the numbers are as they are. We have promoted it, and if people don't come forward, they don't come forward.
Very well. We come now to
Sir?
question. I beg your pardon, I didn't... I'll get back into it. Deputy Mezek, you're first to...
Thank you, sir. It's still early in the morning.
Yes, it is.
Sir, given the Minister's answer to those questions just now, can she advise the Assembly what lessons she has taken from the efforts that they've made so far to encourage people to voluntarily elect for independent taxation, and the low take-up that she's revealed that there is, and how she will be using that experience to inform her strategy for moving for compulsory independent taxation in the coming years?
Sir, I think we have to accept that there will always be a degree of inertia. People are used to doing things in a certain way, and if they're asked to choose to do something differently, they may not rush forward to make that election, even though for some women it's an entirely appropriate thing to do. There may be many reasons why people have remained with the current system of taxation for married couples, which is, again, possibly due to inertia. We have a very full programme of communication planned as we move forward. This is still we're still in the first half. In fact, we're only just in the second quarter of 2023. The tax year 2024 will also be independently taxed on a voluntary basis. So we do have some 18 months to work on our planning and our communications, and we will be doing that. We will be considering that very carefully to make sure that when independent taxation does become compulsory, that people are understanding and have a full understanding of what will be expected of them.
Supplemental, Deputy?
Thank you, sir. When the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel canvassed the public to hear from them their concerns over the move from voluntary independent taxation to compulsory, we encountered a great deal of confusion over what that will specifically mean for households, and a great deal of anxiety. What is the Minister doing now to communicate with those people, and those who we spoke to were just those with access to the internet, many may not have that, to reassure them about the impacts that the move from voluntary to compulsory will have on their household tax liability, and at what point she will be able to say that she has confidence that our community fully understands this and won't suffer any negative consequences because of any misunderstandings on it.
Sir, I would remind the Assembly that I believe the move to independent taxation has been approved by the Assembly. As I say, we have 18 months. We have some 18 months to continue our communications programme. In fact, I only had some emails with one of my officers yesterday asking if it was permissible to ask the scrutiny panel if it would release the input it had received from members of the public to help inform our communication programme, and I hope that the Chair will be willing to give that material to us to help. Everything we can do, everything that's relevant will be taken into account. I can assure the Assembly that we understand that some people may be worse off through the system of independent taxation, but we have planned a compensatory allowance which will manage that and make sure that no one is actually worse off. That compensatory allowance will be in place for some 10 years, but we will take every step to make sure that people understand the implications. Where people need support in filling a tax return, which they haven't done previously, that support will be provided. The Department, Revenue Jersey, already deals with people who are filing a tax return for the first time in old age, and we will be making sure that people understand the compensatory allowance and how that's applied.
Deputy Scott.
Yes, sir. Could I please ask for the day vote to be lifted from Constable Honeycomb, who is in fact attending by Teams and can hear the chamber, but for some technical reason, his response to the appel wasn't heard.
Very well, that seems to be entirely reasonable. Thank you very much indeed. Deputy Taddy. Deputy Taddy? Oh, I see. Usher, could you move back, please? Because we can't step to...
Would the Minister agree that it might be a reasonable assumption that those who have elected for independent taxation, those couples, might be ones who would benefit financially from independent taxation as opposed to joint taxation? And does she have any statistics about the financial situation of those couples who have elected to share with us?
No, sir, I don't have any statistics to hand, and I'm not sure if my officers have those statistics. There may be many reasons why people have elected for independent taxation. It may be because the married woman wishes to be treated as an independent person and not to have her income treated as that of her husband. There may be all sorts of reasons, but I can't explain that at present, no.
So I'm quite surprised to hear that piece of work or even that consideration wasn't thought about before embarking on this experimental period, because not least there may be financial consequences for the Treasury. And it does seem reasonable that whatever one's moral objections to women having to rely on their husbands, that if you're going to be worse off for a few years, you're probably not going to elect for independent taxation. And so could the Minister seek to provide that information about the breakdown of demographics to share, if not with the Assembly, certainly I would have thought scrutiny would be interested in it.
Sir, I can ask if the officers have that data, but as I said, I do not know if it exists at present. And as I say, there may be many reasons why people have chosen to be taxed independently. I would imagine going to 9,000 couples to ask for the reasons may be a piece of work that is more administratively burdensome than it is useful.
Final supplemental, Deputy Arnold.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure the majority of members are fully supportive of independent taxation. It's quite right that all new taxpayers move on to that basis. So, but it is clear from work that's been done that the majority of existing tax-paying couples, sir, do not like the retrospective nature of having paid joint taxation for most of their married lives, do not want to be forced into compulsory taxation. Does the Assistant Minister, sir, or could I hear her views, or perhaps does she accept that perhaps a low number of tax-paying couples, some 5% of all tax-paying couples, have volunteered for to pay joint taxation, sir? Sorry, independent taxation. Can she not accept that that might be just due to the unpopular nature of the move, sir, to force people onto this? And would she consider perhaps rethinking it? Thank you.
Minister.
Sir, I don't agree with Deputy Farnham that there is overwhelming or in fact very much evidence at all that people are opposed to this move. It was supported by this Assembly. It is entirely the right thing to do. There may be small groups of people who object to the move. I think particularly older people who, as I said, will be supported. People who are worse off will be supported by the compensatory allowance. And I have to say, I'm not clear whether people are necessarily better off through moving to independent taxation. I see no reason to now move from the stated intention of this Assembly and to not introduce independent taxation across the board. The reasons for doing that on a mandatory basis were set out in my letter to scrutiny, my very recent letter to scrutiny, and I'm sure that letter could be made available to the whole, to all members if scrutiny agreed. I'm not sure it's already been published. Thank you, sir.
Very much. We come to question 2. The Deputy Taddy will ask the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Taddy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister... Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether seasonal workers are able to claim parental leave, including 6 weeks paid leave and 52 weeks unpaid leave, And if so, is the Minister aware of this entitlement ever having been claimed?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Entitlement to parental leave is a day one employment right enjoyed by employees regardless of the type of employment contract they have in Jersey. This will include those seasonal workers who come to the island on work permits. On the expiry of the work permit and the departure of the employee, the rights conferred by the employment law inevitably fall away. I'm not aware whether this right has been exercised by such an employee as a seasonal worker. There is no reason why an employer would inform the government about an individual's entitlement to parental leave or whether they decided to exercise that right. That is a matter between the employee and their employer.
Supplemental, Deputy.
Yeah, I thank the Minister for confirming what I broadly thought was the case. I'm slightly intrigued by the word inevitably, in that the rights inevitably fall away. So could she confirm, as for example, of course there are different seasonal workers for different contracts, maybe 9 months, maybe a year, maybe 3 years. And what would happen if somebody, let's say, 8 months into a seasonal 9-month work permit decided they want to take their 6 weeks pregnancy leave? Would they then be deported at the end of the 4-week period because their work permit had finished? And would the payment, because I know it's a question to Social Security, sir, would the payment after 4 weeks simply terminate, or would the 6 weeks be paid in absence of the worker not being in Jersey?
So employment rights are only enforceable when one is actually an employee. If the employment contract terminates, then the employment rights under that contract will terminate. I can't comment on whether a person would be deported. That's not a matter for Social Security. I would like to think not. The work permit situation and the employment rights situation overlap. But if where a person has an accrued right, then I'm sure it will be paid. Thank you.
Deputy Sutton.
Yes, it occurs to me that these rights are statutory, it seems to me, and cannot be dismissed by just saying, no, that is a matter between the employee and the employer. It's a matter for the Social Security Department, surely.
Sir, I don't believe any employer is required to notify government when employees take sick leave or maternity leave or parental leave or any form of employment right. So we have no way of knowing that. I'm not aware that this has been raised with us through any forum. Jersey Advisory and Conciliation Service have done a lot of work to make sure people are aware of parental rights. And parental rights and seasonal workers is not something that has been flagged with my department.
Supplemental, Deputy Sutton.
If I may, sir, is the Minister's problem one that we have not defined how long contracts will last, whether it is 9 months, 2 years, or 3 years, and therefore these rights must pertain to some of those workers? Does she not agree?
So the rights in question, as I've said, apply to all employees from day one of their employment. The length of the contract is irrelevant. If you're in a contract and you require parental leave, you're entitled to that leave under our employment law. It is statutory. Yes.
Deputy Field.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister inform the Assembly what, if any, measures the Department takes to ensure that employers are compliant with the employment law?
Sir, I don't think that's the job of the Social Security Department. That's why we have the Employment Tribunal, I believe, has the remit to address issues where employers are failing. Employees and employers can go to the Advisory and Conciliation Service for advice to help deal with such matters. Where issues are flagged with us, we will address them. Where there appears to be serious breaches, but nobody is applied to come to employees, and employers do not come to Social Security if they have issues with the law. Thank you.
Supplemental, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. The Minister mentioned that the tribunal is open to take employment disputes. However, in order to go to a tribunal, you do need to be aware of what your rights are, and also employers need to know what they should be doing for their employees. So if the Minister does not consider it her department's role to ensure compliance, what has her department done to ensure that both employees and employers understand their rights in accordance with the law?
So, as I've just said, the Jersey Advisory and Conciliation Service, which are funded by government, are there to advise both employers and employees about employee rights. Those are, I believe, well publicised, and an employer has a duty to know what his obligations, his or her, or their obligations to an employee are, and to be aware with their legal advisors, with their HR advisors, who are professional people, what their obligations are. Thank you.
Final supplementary, Deputy Talley.
Thank you, sir. There will no doubt be other follow-ups offline, but can I thank the Minister first of all for those answers. Can I ask her whether she agrees that there is an inherent duty of care on her department and on government to look after the hundreds, potentially in the thousands of seasonal workers that we have in the island, to make sure that we don't simply wait for problems to arise, but we know that actually how these day one rights might actually work out in reality, so that when they arrive, both they and the employer are fully informed. And if so, would she look to having a piece of work in her department to actually explain these rights more clearly to those two groups?
Sir, I don't think it's right to say that government has a duty of care to employees of an employer. The employer has a duty of care and the liability to ensure that his employees, their employees' rights are observed. Work is being done, I believe, to give work already exists to give seasonal workers guidance as to their rights. I think this may have been the subject of a question recently. I believe revised guidance for seasonal workers is in hand. There is already information available on websites. It's available on websites because it can be translated into multiple languages. I think we recently agreed with the Kenyan ambassador that some of that information would be translated into Swahili. Government is doing everything it can to make sure that seasonal workers are aware of their rights, and that employee and employers must also play their part in ensuring that those rights are observed. Thank you.
Come to question 3, the Deputy Catherine Curtis will ask of the Chair of the State's Employment Board. Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chair state how many senior civil servants and appointees, if any, have been appointed within the last year without going through the process as outlined in the Jersey Appointments Commission's guidelines for the recruitment of senior states employees, appointees and members of independent bodies? And if the process has not been followed, will the Chair explain why and whether this is considered to be acceptable practice?
Thank you, sir. The appointment process of senior civil servants and appointees is overseen by the Jersey Appointments Commission. The oversight and assurance is clearly described in the guidelines. This includes not only recruitment, but succession planning, oversight and the audit of appointments conducted under significant reorganisations, such as the implementation of a new target operating model. There has been one role, the recently recruited Chief Officer of Health and Community Service, which was not overseen by the Commission. The needs of regulatory governance and financial accountability continue to be met, however. Both the Chief Executive and the Chief People Officer met with the Chair of the Appointments Commission to explain the circumstances and the rationale for the urgent appointment to an interim role as an exception. The Chair was also informed in writing to regularise the position. The Chair of the JAC welcomed the discussion and assurances of future conduct and after the explanations. The need for urgency was an exceptional circumstance that did not follow the guidance on this one occasion. The interim chief officer had recently gone through an open competition to lead the turnaround team that was overseen by the Jersey Appointments Commission.
Supplemental question, Deputy Curtis?
Yes, I don't think that was an answer to my question, because I did ask about whether the process has been followed, and not sort of overall guidance, but the process, which is clearly set out.
So I believe that I have answered the question quite clearly and talked through the process that occurred in this occasion for what is an interim chief officer role.
Well, Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. Could I ask the Chief Minister what role ministers play in the appointment of senior civil servants in the departments for which they're responsible?
As the Deputy is, I'm sure, well aware, ministers don't play a significant role in the appointment of senior civil servants.
So does that mean, therefore, then senior civil servants can be appointed without appropriate input or approval from ministers, leading to a risk that ministers end up forced to work with senior officials who they don't personally have confidence in?
So I'm sure the Deputy is familiar with the Employment of the States of Jersey Employees Law, which sets out the process for the Appointments Commission. And there is sometimes a process or an informal process with a minister in that process which is set out in the law, but it is not something that is set out in the law.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask the Chair of the SCB, the appointment that's been spoken about here is an interim appointment. Can we be assured that any permanent appointment will go through the full process that is being asked about today? Thank you, sir.
I thank the Deputy for the question. Yes, this is a fixed-term interim appointment, and of course we will be going out for the substantive appointment very shortly, and that of course will follow the processes and will be overseen by the Jersey Appointments Commission.
Supplemental, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. And can I ask whether the Chair of the SCB believes that having had a temporary interim appointment, it gives an advantage to a particular candidate in any circumstance as we move through, because we have seen shifts for our leadership in our civil service over the last few years. Thank you, sir.
So I would suggest that that will wholly depend upon the circumstances of each role. I can perhaps think of a circumstance that the Deputy might be pointing to, but I can only say that if there is any candidate that seems to be in a pole position, that would only be because of the level of experience that they bring to the role and the value that they will bring to the organisation and the people of Jersey.
Deputy Scott.
Yes, sir. Could the Chair of the SEB just expand on the distinctions between the circumstances that might lead to the circumvention of the normal procedures to recruit an interim senior officer in this way, as opposed to other interim officers such as the interim chief executive?
So as I identified in the opening to this question, there had recently been a recruitment process that was overseen by the Jersey Appointments Commission to identify the lead of the turnaround team, which is doing a fantastic piece of work to benefit health and community services. And therefore, the decision was taken, given the short time frame with which we had to replace an accountable officer to this role, that the recruitment process would not be normally followed.
Supplemental question, Deputy Scott?
No, thank you.
Final supplementary, Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. I would ask that my question, it would be answered. The process as set out by the Jersey Appointments Commission guidelines for the recruitment of senior states employees, appointees and members of independent bodies, has particular guidelines of how this process is carried out. I have heard of numerous instances where this has not been done. So I asked the Chief Minister if she could come back with more details on my question and whether she's aware that the public considers this could be down to nepotism in some cases.
So that's a very strong allegation, and I refer the Deputy back to my previous answer, which outlined that a formal process had been conducted for the interim role that was overseen by the Jersey Appointments Commission. Sometimes it can feel that we cannot do right to do wrong. And of course, many people in watching events in this Assembly and in the government wider often voice their view that it would be good to see people who have come through the system locally to rise to the top. And this is one such occasion when an interim appointment was made, and a person who has been in the process locally and contributed widely to the work of government rose to the top. I simply believe that I have answered the question fully, and there is a constant process of following the guidelines and communicating closely with the Jersey Appointments Commission to ensure that their processes are followed.
Sir, could I raise a point of order?
Yes, of course.
So standing orders, of course, require that answers that ministers provide have to be directly related to the question that was asked. Deputy Curtis, in her questions, has multiple times referred to the process. The Chief Minister has answered referring to a process. They're not necessarily the same thing, and Deputy Curtis is very clearly asking about the process and has named it in her questions, and I think that's where the confusion has arisen, why Deputy Curtis has followed it up.
I see. And so what is the ruling you're asking for?
Whether her answer was indeed directly related to the question, given that her answers referred to a process, not the process.
My interpretation of the chair of SEB's answers was that it was in the affirmative. The process has, other than for the single instance, been followed, but I may have missed the nuance of the difference between a process and the process. And Chief Minister, are you able to clarify whether there is any difference in the distinction? Is it the process that has been followed on all occasions bar one, or is it a process?
So I don't think I can really help you on that one, although I would point out that in her final question, the Deputy did talk about the guidelines set out in the process, and I think that perhaps indicates where some of the confusion may be coming from, if there is any suggestion of imprecision in my answer.
But you intended in your answer to refer to the process, the only process that we're aware of. Is that what you intended?
Yes, sir.
Very well. We come now to question 4. The Deputy Andrews will ask the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide details of Jersey's current national debt as a percentage of gross domestic product?
Thank you, sir. By national debt, I have assumed that the Deputy means borrowing by the states. States have issued 2 public bonds in 2014 and 2022. The former for 250 million has supported our social housing programme, and the latter for 500 million has predominantly been used to repay past service pension liabilities. In the Government Plan 23, this Assembly approved a borrowing limit of just over 90 million for the year, which will be drawn from the revolving credit facility. At present, only 11 million has been drawn. The most recent assessment of our debt to GDP was published by the independent rating agency S&P on the 13th of January this year. Their forecasts, with which I concur, indicate a debt to GDP ratio at the end of 2022 of 13.4%.
Supplemental question. Deputy Minister.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister indicate to the Assembly what he believes is the acceptable limit for how much borrowing the states can responsibly sustain?
That's a good question. If we again look to what S&P have said, they have said that on, bearing in mind this was the previous government, they said that they expect lending or borrowing to rise to a peak of 22.1% in 2025. They maintain the credit rating based on that level of borrowing. We remind ourselves that borrowing doesn't just take place at one time, it can be done over a period of time, therefore reducing the overall percentage. It depends on the circumstances at the time, of course, sir. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Minister? Deputy Scott?
Yes, sir. Could I please ask the Treasury Minister just to explain when he talked about the peak, to which country he was actually referring? Was he talking about an average? Also, whether there are different circumstances, such as having countries not being able to issue their own currency, as opposed to needing to have reserves to support their borrowing.
Are you able to assist?
Yes, thank you, sir. The peak was S&P's assessment of what was proposed for Jersey. The Deputy, of course, is quite right. So the mechanisms that Jersey has at its disposal are different to other countries. She highlights the issue of control of currency, say fiscal or monetary policy. And we know from reading the S&P review that what is critically important in their assessment for us is liquid assets in reserve. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Scott?
No, thank you, sir.
Well, I have Deputy Southern, Deputy Balash, then final supplementary. Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. The Minister referred to an S&P figure of 21% being the relevant rate for us. What is the S&P figure for current borrowing now, as we stand?
So a little bit disheartening when I've already answered that question in my opening comments, but I will reiterate it. Firstly, the S&P peak was 22.1, but now it is 13.4.
Supplemental question, Deputy Southern? No? Very well. Deputy Balash.
Would the Minister agree that whenever the state borrows money, there should always be a reasonable and rational plan for its repayment?
Absolutely, sir. Thank you.
Supplemental question? Final supplementary, Deputy Andrews. Very well, we come on to question 5. The Deputy Scott will ask of the Minister for Health and Social Services.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise how many hospital beds are currently occupied by patients unable to be discharged due to either a lack of supplies of equipment, such as respirators, for use outside the hospital, or support in the community that would otherwise allow their release? And what measures, if any, are currently being taken to alleviate any such bed blocking situations?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Currently, I can advise the Assembly that there are 29 medically fit for discharge patients waiting for either a domiciliary care package or placement in a residential or nursing home. As of last week, of the 29 patients, 9 were waiting for assessment for a domiciliary care package at a specific nursing or residential home placement. 10 have been assessed and accepted for either a domiciliary nursing home or residential care home placement and are expected to be discharged from the hospital within the next 7 days. 4 patients are waiting assessment for specialist dementia beds in the community. The 2 nursing homes who provide this specialist care are currently full, which is the reason for the delay. And 6 patients are waiting for a reassessment by another provider or waiting a date to start their domiciliary care package. In terms of alleviating delayed transfers of care, the discharge team are in daily contact with care providers to ascertain the availability of both packages of care and residential and nursing home placements. For domiciliary care providers,
The delay in accepting patients is primarily due to their inability to support packages of care because they have insufficient carers to meet the demand. For nursing and residential care home managers, the reason is normally because they either have no bed availability or their staffing levels are low. Once patients have been assessed and accepted for domiciliary care or for admittance to a residential or care home placement, hospital discharge is normally prompt. No patients are experiencing a delayed hospital discharge due to lack of equipment in the community.
Well, supplemental question, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for her answer. I would just like to point out to the final part of my question and ask what measures, if any, are currently being taken to alleviate any such bed blocking situations. And also, perhaps you could give us an idea of the average time that's being taken to enable these patients to either go into domiciliary care, sorry, I can't pronounce it, or dementia care.
Thank you. There's a whole range of measures which are involved in actually trying to help people make the transition from hospital to either home or a nursing or a residential home placement. One of the things I've already talked about is the discharge coordination team, who are in the main the team who facilitate that with patients and families and the care providers. One of the things that we are looking at in the future is to look at the market assessment, undertake a market assessment to understand whether we have the right provision across the island. At the moment, one of the key features is trying to actually attract the workforce into the sector. And so another measure is actually trying to make the sector attractive. I know we've been in conversations with colleagues in the sector to see what it is they are doing to actually try and encourage people both locally and overseas to come and work in the sector. In addition to that, we've also got the review of long-term care, which will certainly be a feature that we'll be talking about in the future. But as I say, most of these measures all pull together to actually provide a comprehensive approach to the way in which delayed discharges are managed from the hospital.
Deputy Sutton.
Thank you, sir. In an attempt to make this area, this sector, more attractive in terms of working in it, has the Minister reviewed the terms of the Ethical Care Charter, first voted for in this Assembly 5 years ago, and state what progress has been made in making home care better paid with better conditions in order to attract those necessary workers?
Thank you, sir. I can advise that we haven't made much progress around the Ethical Care Charter, but we have, and I will say again, we have been in discussions with the independent nursing home and domiciliary care sector to understand their position, which is why we actually want to take stock of the conditions overall in terms of what factors are impacting on their ability to provide as well as to recruit staff, and also how we build that into the future model of care in terms of what workforce development we actually need to prepare for the future.
Supplemental question, Deputy Sutton.
So that statement, we haven't made much progress, can I take that as we've made no progress, or either that or it hasn't been discussed yet when it ought to be, because we're talking about attracting people back into a sector which used to be full?
I think that the Deputy will appreciate that this sector has always been fraught with issues around employing people on a sustainable basis due to the variety of options that now are in the workplace. And one of the things that we have got to do is we have got to provide some focus on this and provide sustainability in the market. But I can confirm that we have made little progress with regards to the Ethical Care Charter, and I do make my apologies for that.
Very well. Final supplementary, Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. I note in the Minister's answer she mentioned two reviews, one being of long-term care and the other being a market assessment. I just wondered when the market assessment was going to start and when she expected some report to be made.
Thank you, sir. I can't give any timescales at the moment. We have just recently been discussing this, but I can provide the Assembly with more detail in due course.
Very well. Before we move on to the next question, could I just remind those answering questions that there is a convention by which no answer takes more than 1 minute 30 seconds. So 90 seconds is the answer. One or two individuals have crossed that line, sometimes fairly significantly. So I will be policing that a little bit more assiduously in the future. Very well, we come now to question 6 that Deputy Feltham will ask the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy.
Thank you. Will the Minister provide his assessment of whether Revenue Jersey is adequately resourced to undertake its functions relating to the administration and collection of taxes efficiently and effectively?
Yes, Minister.
So, investment in Revenue Jersey has been very significant over the past 10 years. In monetary terms, investment stood at 4.7 in 2013 and has doubled to 10.6 in 2023. I recently told the CSSP scrutiny panel that I was satisfied that Revenue Jersey is, broadly speaking, adequately resourced. I continue to keep the resourcing of Revenue Jersey under review.
Supplemental question, Deputy Feltham.
Thank you, sir. I noted in the Minister's answer, he said broadly speaking, which wasn't 100%. So I want to focus on compliance. I note that the 2021 annual report noted that a compliance programme had delivered only over £20 million in taxes. Is he confident that the department is adequately resourced to ensure that that compliance continues and that the department is in fact collecting all of the revenue that is due to be collected?
Minister.
The compliance role of the department obviously is one with which the Minister rightly shouldn't be involved. The department has a compliance plan. It targets certain areas that it carries out compliance in. That should not be governed by ministers or politicians for all the reasons that we well understand. The overall resource in regard to the department is something that myself and the ministerial team have fruitful conversation around to ensure that resource is deployed at the right place at the right time when the department is suffering strain of islanders wanting to contact them, particularly when tax returns are due or their tax liability has been issued or a new ITIS rate has been issued.
Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister explain how much of Revenue Jersey's resources are expended on correcting incorrect ITIS notices being issued in the first place?
So as the Deputy would know, that the departments don't budget in that regard. At any given time, there might be an increased workload in any given area, and staff are deployed appropriately to cover those pressures and those priorities. The ITIS system is, of course, something that is quite unique to Jersey. And it arose out of the taxation system, PAYB, and prior year basis and current year basis. It is the best guesstimate dependent on circumstances of individuals and families, and does fluctuate. And that requires the department to do work. It also requires individuals to do work. I find it straightforward, but I understand that many people find it quite complex and complicated. And the only way ultimately to resolve it is to move to a pay-as-you-go basis. But I think that would be a great upheaval and be complex as well.
Supplemental question, Deputy Minister.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister accept that for many islanders it is a recurring incident every year that they receive their ITIS notification, find that it looks strange to them and have to go through a complicated process in getting it corrected? And this does occur for islanders who have relatively simple financial affairs. And if the Minister does acknowledge that that's a recurring problem for many islanders, what is he doing to try to ensure that correct ITIS rates are being issued in the first instance so resources don't have to be expended on fixing them?
So I've been quite clear since becoming Minister that one of my priorities was to support Revenue Jersey in improving their customer service, and this is just one of the areas where we are working together to support customer service. So the department is aware of it. The department is working on this along with other areas that perhaps have been difficult over the number of years where they've had a great deal of changes to the system. So it's on their radar, and I believe that they are making progress.
Well, I have Deputy Ward, then Deputy Southern, then final supplementary. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the Minister, given that we've heard today that only 5% have opted for individual taxation, can the Minister reassure that the Tax Department will be adequately resourced and staffed in order to deal with the move to independent taxation? Thank you, sir.
So I was quite clear in answer to this question from scrutiny last week, I'm not sure if it was Friday or not, that if we follow the previous decision of the Assembly and move to independent taxation on a mandatory basis, then I believe that we can use the resources that we've currently got to largely deliver that. There may be some requirements, but they will be marginal. If we move to a two-basis system where one is able to choose and volunteer, then there will be added costs to that, but we will have to address that if the proposal, when the legislation comes forward, is sought to be amended by members of scrutiny or by backbench members.
Supplemental question?
Yes, thank you, sir. In that answer, the Minister said largely adequate. The devil with tax is in the detail, as we all know. Can he reassure that it will be wholly adequate to deal with the move to independent taxation? Thank you, sir.
So my department is like everyone else's department. When we're following the government plan process, there's always a desire right across the 10 or 11 departments that they'd like a little bit more money to do this, that or the other. The job of the Treasury Minister is to make sure that they are delivering value for money. And that's not just me challenging other ministers, it's me challenging my own officials as well.
So was that yes or no? Out of interest. Thank you, sir. Lost in the middle.
I wouldn't like to have to rule on that particular point, Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. Tom Passé, many a taxation minister has stood there and said how compliant and cooperative our tax base is. Has it changed and got worse over the years or not?
I don't believe it has. I believe what's changed largely is the international standard and the way that the department now has to comply with all sorts of requirements around exchange of information around individuals' details. The Deputy knows we've had FATCA, we've had CRS, we've had changes to our own domestic system, and now we have to show that we can comply, and we are judged by the international standard setters.
Supplemental question, Deputy Southern? Final supplemental, Deputy Feltham.
Thank you, sir. I was interested to hear the Minister talk about delivering value for money. And indeed, in order to deliver value for money, the tax department needs to ensure that it is collecting all revenues that are due in a time-efficient manner. Can the Minister tell the Assembly that he is confident that his department is able to do that? And if it is not able to do that, will he support a business case going into the government planning process that is now, I believe, due to start?
So, as I indicated earlier, myself and the ministerial team have worked carefully with Revenue Jersey to ensure that they are using their resources appropriately for the priority of islanders and the priorities of this Assembly. And that's why I use the words that I did, that I believe that they are, broadly speaking, adequately resourced. I cannot stand in this Assembly in advance of a government plan programme and say that I would support A, B, C, D and E proposals for growth money, because if I did, the issuing government plan would be well without the envelope of income coming into the state. So it's about balance. It's about delivering efficiently and delivering value to islanders.
Very much. Shall we come to question 7? The Deputy Coles will ask of the Chief Minister. Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Given that when ranked against OECD countries in relation to alcohol consumption, Jersey came second, will the Chief Minister advise what the government's assessment is of why islanders consume so much alcohol?
Thank you. Firstly, it should be said that, of course, the Council of Ministers is concerned by this position in the OECD table. Public Health are currently doing research with islanders to understand more about their health and well-being. One of the themes in this research is attitudes to alcohol, and we're specifically holding focus groups to understand more about the impact of alcohol on islanders' health and well-being. As part of that research, we will look to understand what drives consumption and what opportunities there might be to reduce consumption. I would therefore, sir, not want to prejudge the findings of that research.
Supplemental question, Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Does the new substance use strategy brought forward by the Home Affairs Minister fall under an area of relentless focus, given its impact on our society?
The new substance strategy has recently come to the Council of Ministers, and we had a very interesting conversation about it. I think that it is subject to some further refinements, and it will be brought and published shortly.
Very well. Deputy Daddy.
Does the Minister believe that the policy about minimum pricing for alcohol and also a ban on happy hours, etc., and promotions has had any impact at all? And is it a policy that she supports?
I'm not cited on, and certainly can't recall at the moment, the results of that work. What I am aware of is that pricing and affordability is one of the factors that does determine alcohol consumption, and we can see that in lower income households there is less alcohol consumption. I can give the exact details. 22% of households with income less than £40,000 show the lowest levels of hazardous drinking.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Yeah, and specifically on those policies about minimum pricing and promotions being banned, does she think that those kind of policies should be made by politicians?
So ultimately, I would imagine that that is a political judgment, and it has been in the past. And I do believe that the Economic Development team have the licensing laws on their list of work to be done.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the Chief Minister for a timeline on when the substance abuse strategy will be produced and delivered? Thank you, sir.
As I said in my earlier answer, sir, the strategy is due to be published shortly, and then I presume it will move to delivery at a later date.
Supplemental question, Deputy Ward?
Thanks, I did ask for a timeline, but okay. Supplementary, sir, can I ask, the substance abuse strategy, I believe, is based around being a health issue rather than a punitive issue. So does the Minister believe there is enough support for organisations that support those who misuse alcohol and are wanting to change their behaviours? Thanks, sir.
We have a number of organisations in the island who do work with people who misuse substances and alcohol. Whether that is enough is not something that I could give a proper answer to, sir, because I don't have with me any idea of those figures or indeed the number of people that are treated or supported by those groups, I'm afraid. But I'm sure I could ask Health and Community Services if they might have that information to share with the Deputy.
Deputy Sutton.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Is the Minister aware of the current public health initiatives to reduce unhealthy activity in our community, and is she prepared to back that with the right level of funding?
This Council of Ministers has already agreed to support more of an approach to public health and preventative measures, and we are committed to ensuring that there is a greater level of funding to direct our activities at the earlier stages of health and wellbeing.
Supplemental, Deputy Sutton.
When the Minister talks of extra funding, what sort of levels are we talking about? A doubling of the price that we need to exact of our community, or otherwise?
So I don't have any specific figures to hand at the moment in terms of the level of funding that we are providing to our public health colleagues at the moment, but I can say that it is a priority. I think also the Deputy was suggesting that we might be looking to draw more money out of the general public's purses to fund such measures, and as I said, we haven't. We're embarking on that work in relation to licensing laws, and so I certainly would not be able to give any reasonable indication of that at this time.
Your final supplementary, Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. I'm actually going to steal a question that was put from a Jersey Youth Assembly member who's actually sat in my very seat and was very, very good. So what does a successful substance use strategy look like to the Chief Minister?
So I guess things start at the beginning, don't they? And if people are leading a happy and fulfilling life and enjoying a good quality of life, then they have less cause to seek to ease any pain that they might feel by abusing substances or alcohol. And so sir, I take the hope that people will enjoy a good quality of life in the island, and that our community will be one where everyone can thrive, and therefore they shall not seek to misuse substances.
Well, we come now to question 8 that Deputy Rob Wall will ask for the Minister for Children and Education. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask the Minister, will the Minister advise the current completion rate of the Jersey Teacher Training JTT programme and also the retention rate up to 2 years from completion? Thank you, sir.
Sir, in the absence of the Minister, I will answer the question. The Jersey Graduate Teacher Training Programme was launched in 2004 and has been a regular annual programme since 2011. Teachers who complete the Jersey Graduate Teacher Training Programme must also complete the Early Career Teacher ECT induction, previously known as the NQT. in order to confirm the qualified teacher status. At this point, they are fully qualified. Between 2018 and 2022, 40 trainees have started the Jersey Graduate Teacher Training Programme. 2 withdrew during the course of their training. Of the remaining 38, there was a 100% pass rate, and 95% are currently teaching in Jersey schools, according to analysis in 2022. The retention rate across the programme as a whole remains very high, with 74% of all locally trained teachers since 2004 still teaching in government schools this academic year. There may be some who are teaching in local non-provided schools that we are not aware of. This year we started the teacher training programme with 24 trainees, 2 withdrew, and the remaining 22 will receive their final assessments at the end of this summer term. Looking specifically at 2022, we had 4 people on the training scheme. There was 100% pass rate, and all are currently working in Jersey schools. In 2021, there were 11 trainees, again a 100% pass rate. 10 are still currently working in Jersey schools. And 2020, there were 8 trainees. 1 withdrew mid-year. There was 100% rate amongst the remainder, and all are currently working in Jersey schools. Thank you.
Supplemental question?
Thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for that long answer. Can I ask, there is a huge amount of support required in the classroom from members of staff who are already working. Can I ask the Minister, what happens if the level of support required for an effective training is not available? Or can the Minister assure us that, or can the Minister assure us that this level of training and support is always available? Thank you, sir.
So whilst I don't have any specific details, I'm not aware that the specific training, the specific resources are not available. I think the high pass rate confirms that people get the required training. The support for the resources is something that I would have to ask officers to provide further information, and I can do that if you require that.
Deputy Minister.
Thanks, sir. Could the Assistant Minister confirm whether the department is aware of any increase in demand for that support from other staff members, given the large numbers of those going through teacher training?
I'm certainly not aware of that, but again, if there's further specific information required, I will ask officers to provide that to you.
Supplemental, Deputy Minister? Final supplementary, Deputy Ward.
Yes, thank you, sir. The Minister mentioned the early career teacher year to complete the training. When JTTP students are complete the course, are they offered permanent contracts, or is they offered a one-year contract to complete the early career training?
Unfortunately, that isn't information that I have with me, but again, I will ask for that to be provided. Thank you.
Very well, we come to question 9 that Deputy Messick will ask the Chief Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister advise whether, during her time in office, any civil servants have formally asked for investigations to take place regarding allegations of bullying by ministers?
Sir, I've written to the Deputy in his capacity as Chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, and as I said in that letter, no formal grievances have been raised. Should there be any formal complaint, we will ensure that policy and procedures are adhered to.
Supplemental question, Deputy Minister?
Thank you, sir. It is indeed the case that in her original letter to me, the Chief Minister said that no formal grievances had been raised or investigations undertaken. In a second letter she sent subsequent to that, she referred to another process on a separate matter as expected to be resolved through mediation in line with the objectives of seeking informal resolution. What is a separate matter, and does it not arise from a formal grievance being raised or an investigation being requested into accusations of bullying from ministers?
I think the matter that was being referred to in that is a completely separate one. It does not relate to, and it is a matter that has also fallen away, and it was never a formal matter.
Deputy Ward.
Thanks, sir. Can I ask the Chief Minister, formal grievances are very difficult decisions to be made by members of staff who have to work within the environment. Is she aware of any allegations or any concerns that have been raised and then the formal grievances not been reached simply because the member of staff felt they couldn't?
So, as I said in my first answer, there are formal processes and procedures, and I would hope that if anyone did have a genuine matter that they wish to raise as a formal grievance, that they would feel able to do so.
Does the Minister believe that members of the civil service have enough knowledge of the Commissioner for Standards so that they could be used, the Commissioners for Standards, for an anonymous complaint, should it be necessary, if they don't feel they can do that in the workplace? Thank you, sir.
The work of the Commissioner for Standards has been in place now for some years, and I think it has been quite widely communicated, and therefore I do believe that people know of its existence and of course use it from time to time. And there are of course also internal processes and procedures and whistleblowing process also.
Deputy Felton.
Thank you. Would the Chief Minister be able to inform the Assembly what steps somebody would need to take if they wish to lodge a formal grievance?
So I'm not a manager in my political role, but I believe that somebody would, in the first instance, contact their line manager. If one looks at the whistleblowing process on the website, I believe that if the matter relates to a state's member, then the person should do that through the Chief Executive or their office.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Can the Chief Minister confirm that in accordance with the relevant policy that complaints that are made in relation to states members should in fact be forwarded by whoever takes them to the Commissioner for Standards?
So I believe that the whistleblowing process is an internal Government of Jersey process that is administered by people and corporate services. That would be a matter for them. As I say, I'm not a manager, I'm a politician.
Final supplementary, Deputy Mezey.
Thank you, sir. These answers are going to be studied very carefully after this state sitting. Could I ask the Chief Minister, following the letter from scrutiny asking whether complaints or issues or investigations had been asked for into allegations of inappropriate conduct or bullying of civil servants by ministers, who did the Chief Minister go to obtain the information she needed to provide her answer that apparently no formal grievances or complaints had been made? And I'll leave it there for now, sir.
So I do find the Deputy's tone a little threatening, but sir... well, thank you.
I think we will. I understand the observations, but we will leave it as exchanges through the chair in the normal way. I think the question is: to whom did you seek information? From whom did you seek information in answering in the manner that you did?
Sir, letters are prepared and answers are prepared also through the usual channels with officials, and particularly those officials who are involved in whatever that matter that is being answered relates to.
Well, we now come to question 10 that Deputy Alves will ask of the Minister for Home Affairs. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Given that it has previously been stated that the report from the Independent Task Force on Violence Against Women and Girls will be published by April 2023, will the Minister advise when the report and its recommendations will be published? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you. Publication of the task force report and recommendation was delayed after the decision was taken to extend the public call for evidence until late January 2023 in order to increase rates of engagement. The qualitative research period was also extended beyond what was initially anticipated, as researchers wanted to ensure there was adequate time to meaningfully engage with professionals, victim survivors and children and young people. The task force is now due to publish its report and recommendations in July 2023.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Minister for her answer. How will the Minister handle and implement the recommendations of this report when she currently has no jurisdiction over the court system in Jersey, unlike our counterparts in England and Wales Justice Ministry? Thank you, sir.
First of all, I think it's important that I don't second guess the report. I haven't seen the report and I haven't seen the recommendations. Therefore, I'm really unable to give a comprehensive answer to that question.
Very well. Deputy Ward.
Thanks. So may I ask the Minister, does she have faith in the law officer and the courts to make the changes from the report to improve systems for citizens, women and girls, because some of the recommendations could be quite radical? Thanks.
I think I referred to my previous answer, sir. I haven't seen the report, I haven't seen the recommendations, and I will make up my mind when I do so.
Thanks, sir. Can I ask the Minister, does she believe that perhaps the Home Affairs Minister having more power to direct outcomes from such a report would be useful for her, regardless that she hasn't seen the outcomes yet? Thanks, sir.
Sir, as the Deputy well knows, the court service in Jersey remains independent. The Attorney General is a Crown appointment, not a government appointment, and the Minister has executive control of the justice function.
Final supplementary, Deputy Alves.
No, thank you, sir. I think Deputy Ward covered everything. Thank you.
Very much. We come to question 11. The Deputy Rob Ward will ask the Minister for Social Security. Deputy.
Thanks, sir. Sorry, I've just been given a piece of paper and I've been thrown out of balance. Thanks, sir. Will the Minister advise how many Andium Homes tenants are repaying special payment loans to Social Security for the provision of carpets, and what is the total cost to income support of these loans? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. This question is similar to a written question that was answered on Monday, 6th of February of this year, and public information is also available through an FOI request answered last year. It's estimated that there are approximately 114 households who are currently Andium tenants and are repaying a special payment loan for carpets. As explained in the response to the written question, only an estimate is possible because of the way loans are recorded. Where relevant, loans are consolidated for the convenience of the individual, as a household could be repaying more than one loan, for example, for carpets and white goods, and it's not therefore possible to guarantee that the loan amount is wholly in respect of carpets without manually checking each income support claim. In addition, some households may have had loans prior to becoming Andium tenants. Our estimate of the total value of loans being repaid through income support is £108,000. Thank you.
Supplemental question.
Yes, thank you, sir. Does the Minister feel that loan payments for carpets in a social housing provider could be removed if simply the housing provider put carpets into the home in the first place? Thanks.
Sir, I believe that's a matter for the housing provider. I believe that Andium, for example, provides homes on a completely unfurnished basis, and one advantage of them doing that is that it means they do not need to take a security deposit from the tenant to replace or renew damaged goods. So by not taking a deposit, people will have funds available to pay for their carpets. It also allows people to choose what they want in their own homes rather than have to live with what a provider has placed in them. Thank you.
Deputy Talley.
Is the Minister aware of her department providing loans for carpets to any members of the public on income support who are not in Andium, so renting in the private sector? And what would her response be if somebody came to the department saying, can I have a loan to pay for carpets in my private rental accommodation?
Sir, I believe that any income support tenant who requires a loan to buy carpets or white goods can obtain that regardless of the landlord.
So is the Minister concerned that Andium, as far as I know, seems to be the only housing provider, private or public, in Jersey that don't provide their customers, their tenants, with flooring? So it's not just carpets, it could be that they move into a kitchen with concrete on it rather than having laminate flooring. And is she concerned that there is, this sends a signal out to other landlords that actually it's acceptable for them not to provide carpets because actually the Social Security Department will provide loans so that they can pay for it themselves?
Sir, I can't account for what decisions housing providers or landlords make. But loans are available if people need them to buy. It allows people choice in what they do in their own homes. Someone may come in and say they have a green sofa and the last thing they want is a red carpet. And things matter. It matters to people that they have choices about their environments. And I think it's entirely right that we provide loan funding to people to allow them to buy carpets or white goods where that's required. And I don't think it matters who the landlord is. Landlords make a choice. Sometimes it's convenient for landlords. The point about people may also decide they want to put wood and or laminate flooring down in their homes. Thank you.
Every Sudden.
Thank you, sir. Given that the Minister has responsibility for the actions of her own department, would she agree that there has been a change in emphasis over the past few years, such that £1.2 million given as grants used to be the practice, 0.4 million is now given for white goods as a grant. So the emphasis has gone from grants to loans. And if you're living on income support, it's very difficult to pay back that loan because you are living on the minimum possible for your circumstances, and an extra £5 a week or £10 a week coming off your...
This does have to come to a question.
It does indeed, sir.
Yes.
It's
Pretty well straight away, really.
It was earlier. Is it not the Minister's responsibility to oversee proper behaviour rather than loans versus grants?
I'm not sure I understand the question, sir. I believe the decision to move to loans rather than grants was a decision of this Assembly some time ago. My department are there to implement the decisions of this Assembly. We don't make it up as we go along. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Sutton?
I'd be grateful for a reference to where this Assembly agreed to such a move.
Very well. Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has on previous occasions referred to a review of the benefits system. Could she explain to members whether it is the case that this particular support mechanism is included in that review?
So I don't believe that's been picked up as something that we need to review just at the moment. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Mezek? No. Thank you very much. Final supplementary, Deputy Ward.
I think so. It's changed given the answers given. Can I ask the Minister whether she would support a move back to a grant system away from a loan system for the least able to repay a loan in our community? Thank you, sir.
That's quite a big question, sir. I think there are cases where people are given grants. For example, care leavers are sometimes given grants for a number of things to help them set up homes. But I think otherwise, loans are repaid over quite a long period. People may move off income support and be paying loans because they are repayment schedules are agreed with the customer over a period of time such that they can afford it within their living. It's a matter of the States Assembly to change that, sir. Thank you.
Very well. We come now to question 12. The Deputy Feltham will ask the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy Feltham.
Thank you. Will the Minister provide an update on his assessment of the implementation of the Integrated Technology Solution, i.e. Connect, within his department?
Thank you, sir. The new system was implemented in January 2023. Connect is used by all departments across government and has been more than just a system implementation. It involves business change and adoption of standard processes across the organisation. With any change of this scale, it was inevitable that issues would arise, and indeed they are being addressed. There is a process to raise any issues, and high priority issues are being resolved quickly. The government has replaced a 20-year-old unsupported financial system, and today we are managing the government's finances on a more modern cloud-based system.
Supplemental question, Deputy Feltham.
I thank the Minister for his answer and his assessment that there have been issues that have arisen. Could he inform the Assembly of some of those major issues and some of the risks that his department might be carrying as a consequence?
I think I've already said this in the public domain. They have been mostly around raising and paying of invoices. Some of those are the system issues which are being resolved. Some of them are simply the processes that have built up over time across the organisation. Any new IT system cannot be simply introduced and digitise previous processes. Process has to change, there has to be change management, and then the IT system can work. And as I stand here today, I would suggest that most of the challenges we face are around system change that perhaps wasn't done in the way that we had either hoped or expected to be done.
Excuse me, sir. I don't think my question was asked in relation to risks that might arise out of those issues.
Sorry, sir. I'd have thought that was straightforward. There is a great risk that if invoices are not paid, then services will not be delivered into the future. The corollary of that is, of course, that invoices could be paid which shouldn't have been raised. So this is a process that has to be worked through when it comes to historic invoices, and it has to be worked through carefully, mitigating those risks. But the overwhelming message is that individuals from my department are going out right across departments to support those departments to make sure that they understand how to use the system appropriately and are using the system appropriately, therefore, in the best way possible, mitigating those risks.
When we come to question 13, the Deputy Scott will ask the Minister for Housing and Communities. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what investigation, if any, he has undertaken into the collapse of the Guren Group, including the impact any changes in contractual arrangement in light of market conditions between the group and social housing providers may have had?
Minister.
So, thank the Deputy for a question. I'm not aware of any investigations taking place. I understand that the circumstances leading to the collapse of the Guren Group were very specific rather than sectorial. To the best of my knowledge, I understand that the largest contractual exposure for social housing related to the Andium Homes project at Cyril-le-Marchand Court. Andium had contingency plans in place and were quick to react. In doing so, Andium was able to bring a new contractor on board within days, maintaining the continuity of employment of subcontractors, saving a significant number of jobs, and ensuring that the development of the site is completed with the minimum of delay.
Supplemental, Deputy Scott?
Yes, please, sir. Could the Minister advise if he is aware of any problems that were alerted to Andium by the group owing to the nature of the contractual, owing to the terms of the contractual arrangement and the change of market conditions that that affected the ability of the group to perform its obligations without difficulty.
So thank Deputy for a question. I just want to clarify what the question exactly is. Is it about whether Andium knew beforehand that there was an issue? Is that the question the Deputy is asking?
Sir, thank you. Yes, to clarify, it is whether Andium were alerted of a problem regarding the delivery of the contract in that way.
Thank you. And just to clarify that, I don't know, and the answer to that would be with Andium. And if you want to direct that question to Andium, so the Deputy would like to direct that question to Andium, please do so.
Very well. We come now to question 14. The Deputy Andrews will ask the Minister for Home Affairs. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise the number of under-18s who have been prosecuted between 2017 and 2022? And of those prosecutions, how many led to convictions?
I thank the Deputy for his question. Between 2017 and 2022, 4,037 offences were recorded as crimes having been committed by young people. This is not unique individuals because this will include repeat offenders. 1,416 unique young people were recorded as being a suspect in the committing of these crimes between 2017 and 2022, an average of about 236 per year. From those 4,037 recorded crimes, 685 have been charged, i.e. remanded to youth court. Of those 685 crimes charged, 240 were dismissed, 53 cases resulted in imprisonment, 48 resulted in a fine, 27 resulted in community service, and the remainder were dealt with either by probation or binding over orders.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Obviously, this is an area of speciality for the Home Affairs Minister. So I'd like to ask the Minister, sir, if she believes there needs to be any changes in the approach to how we support young people who are maybe going through a difficult time. Thank you, sir.
I thank the Deputy for his endorsement on my level of knowledge about this area. Clearly, as Home Affairs Minister and also personally, I would much prefer our young people are dealt with by the Parish Hall Inquiry System, which is obviously an excellent system that has been in operation for well over 800 years. However, I do acknowledge that there are times when the court is required to exercise its authority.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the Minister whether there are records kept of stop and search and the age of those who have been stopped and searched? And I asked the question, sir, as to then, therefore, if there is a link between stop and search and these prosecutions, or whether there is no link whatsoever. Thank you, sir.
To the best of my belief, all stop and search are recorded on a pro forma. It's very difficult to understand whether the results of those stop and searches are linked to ultimate prosecution in court. Evidently, if somebody is stopped and searched and something is discovered and there is evidence to suggest that an offence has been committed, that young person would be processed through the police in the usual way. So that would be either filtering through the Parish Hall Inquiry System, or if the offence was so serious, being charged directly to the youth court. I hope that answers the Deputy's question.
Thank you.
Supplemental question?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Can I ask the Minister whether she has any concerns about stop and search, particularly for younger members of our society, those under 16, for example, who may not have a parent nearby, and whether, because there was a written question that I put in that says this has happened. So I just want to ask the Minister whether she has any concerns around that area. Thanks.
Once again, I don't have the exact details with me, but it would concern me slightly that under 16s were being stopped and searched unless there was an immediate concern for safety. And I can't second guess the figures, but it would be a safety issue. I think that the police would normally take that action around stop and search.
Very well. Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister have any breakdown, or could she give an indication from the figures she gave in her opening answer to how many of those incidents involved children who were below the age of 14? And if I could add to that, sir, will she be considering the age of criminal responsibility in her term in office?
I thank the Deputy for his question, of which I can't remember the first part because I was so stunned by the second part about the age of criminal responsibility. Could I ask the Deputy to repeat the first part of his question, please?
Very well.
So it was about the numbers in relation to her first answer of children who fell below the age of 14, and that helps them with the second question, second part.
Thank you. As the Deputy, I'm sure, will know, the Attorney-General has issued guidelines to make sure that children under the age of 15 do not receive a charge to the youth court without the express permission of a law officer. Any child under the age of 14 cannot be referred to the youth court without the express permission of the Attorney-General. So that is actually operating as a way to reduce the age of criminal responsibility. Coming to the second part of the question, that's always going to be a tricky one. My own personal view is that the age of criminal responsibility could be much higher. In some countries, it's actually 18. I think if I'd be a very brave Home Affairs Minister to bring a proposition to this Assembly that we increase the age of criminal responsibility to 18. Nonetheless, I think it is my responsibility to ensure that we have systems and processes in place that are appropriate to deal with young people to avoid them being criminalised.
Supplementary question. Final supplementary, Deputy Andrews. Well, we come now to question 15. The Deputy Tadier will ask of the Minister for Home Affairs. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister confirm whether the current immigration rules, under the current immigration rules, a seasonal worker on a 9-month temporary work permit is allowed to remain in the island to claim their 6-week parental leave entitlement, in particular if this overlaps with the expiration of their permit?
I thank the Deputy for his question. This question is related to the earlier question answered by the Minister for Social Security. An individual employed in Jersey under the work permit policy in any of the temporary work permit routes is not permitted to bring their dependents with them to the island. This includes a spouse, civil partner or child. Under the Employment Jersey Law 2003, an individual working in Jersey under work permit conditions shall be entitled to parental leave. However, their right to parental leave ends on the date that their employment is terminated. On the expiration of a work permit or visa, an individual will no longer be in employment in Jersey and therefore no longer able to meet the requirements for which the work permit or visa has been issued and would therefore no longer qualify for parental leave. There is an expectation for the individual to leave the CTA no later than the expiry date printed on their work permit or visa.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So I'm trying to get my head around the fact that we would possibly deport somebody who has just given birth in the island because they're no longer allowed to stay. But I can't formulate a question on the hoof on that, sir. What I will ask, sir, is if the same question I asked the Social Security Minister, does she believe that there's a duty of care on the part of government towards seasonal employees and, of course, to employers to make sure that the rights that they have, and in fact the rights that they have in practice and the complexities are understood by both parties before they come to the island to avoid any potential hardship?
Thank you for the question. The first thing I would like to say is that the Immigration Department most certainly would not be deporting a pregnant woman or a woman that had just given birth if she was on a work permit. I think it's fair to say that we would deal with each case on a case-by-case basis. Providing a pregnant woman has employment, she is permitted to stay until the end of her permit. If she's due to give birth towards the end of that permit, she would be allowed to remain here and then leave at the appropriate time. The second part of the question, we have started to undertake specific pieces of work around informing permit workers of their rights and responsibilities. And as the Minister for Social Security said again, those are translated into different areas, and we have more information on the website than we had previously.
Well, Deputy Feltham.
Can the Minister confirm that should a work permit holder become pregnant during their tenure of the permit, that they could take some leave under the employment law, including the 6 weeks parental leave, and not have their still be employed and not be in breach of their permit?
Yes, I can confirm that is the case.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
I thank the Minister for that answer. Can she inform the Assembly whether the employers that are employing people on work permits are in fact informed about what they need to do in order to comply with the employment law?
That is a matter for the employment law rather than the Home Affairs Department, and any employer would know that their employees have day one rights.
A final supplementary, Deputy Teddy.
The Minister will be aware that it's not just 9-month contract workers we're talking about, and it's not just 6 weeks leave. There is also an entitlement from day one to 52 weeks unpaid leave. Would the Minister explain what would happen if somebody on a seasonal permit gave birth 6 months into their contract and decided they wanted to take 52 weeks unpaid leave? Would they then be expected to, would they be asked to leave the island, or would they be expected to remain on unpaid leave for the duration of the rest of their contract?
A person has permission to stay as long as the work permit is valid. So that would mean that at the end of the work permit, depending on the circumstances, they would have to leave. The complication arises as to whether the employer then applies for an extension of that work permit.
Very well. Come to the final question that Deputy Messick will ask the Minister for the Environment. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide an update on his plans to lodge regulations to introduce a system for the licensing of rented dwellings?
Sir, I thank the Deputy for his question and the opportunity to update the Assembly on this important subject. In February, I answered a question on this matter and informed the Assembly that I intended to lodge regulations regarding the licensing of private rented dwellings in mid-April, with the intention that they be debated in mid-June. Clearly, I have missed those dates. It has taken longer than I would have liked to work through the various stages, and we've had to make a few tweaks of a technical nature to the draft regulations. However, I'm pleased to say the delay is only a short one, and I intend to publish the regulations very shortly with the intention that they be debated in the sitting in the first week of July. In other words, one session later than originally suggested. If approved, the aim is that the regulations should come into force at the start of 2024. Thank you.
Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir. The Minister referred to tweaks of a technical nature. Can he elaborate as to exactly what those are and whether they have a material impact on the form that the regulations will take and the level of protection that will be offered to tenants as a result of them?
So slightly difficult to answer since we're talking about regulations which haven't yet been published in draft form. But the point is, I can, I think, offer some reassurance. I don't think that the changes that we were making, which were partly in consultation with law officers, were of any significant nature that would change the policy intent. And the policy intent is clear. The outlines of the scheme will become clear very shortly. I'm having a meeting, I think, tomorrow with the Landlords Association. I'll be also meeting with the social housing providers as well to make sure that everyone is kept in the loop. I look forward very much to the chance to bring those regulations, which I think will offer the kind of protections that the Deputy has long campaigned for.
Deputy Scott.
Hello, sir. Sorry, sir. Thank you, sir. Could I please ask the Minister regarding the grants with respect to electric bikes, whether this extends to kits that can actually convert?
Sir, I think we've run questions without notice.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
This does not relate at all to the
I'm
terms of the
sorry,
question,
sir.
Deputy
I was
Scott.
distracted. Sorry.
Yes. Obviously, any supplemental question must, so far as possible, or relate to the
I apologise
original
for my
question.
attentions.
No, not at all. I'm just giving general guidance here. Sometimes there's an element of leeway which I afford if it seems to me to be arguably tenuously connected, but not in these circumstances. Yes, Deputy Rob Ward.
Thank you, sir. I won't ask the question without notice. I'll get straight into the supplementary, sir. So, given that the principles on landlord licensing have been voted for in this Assembly, and then the regulations were voted against, by some of whom were a significant number of the current Council of Ministers with which the Minister works, is the Minister concerned that the regulations he brings may not be successful for the same reasons? Sir.
So I know the history of this subject, and I have worked very hard to try and make these regulations, to form these regulations in a way that means that they meet some of the objections of people have raised in the past. In particular, I've tried to make them simple. I've tried to make them as clear to understand as possible, and I've tried to respond also to some of the problems that were raised by the Landlords Association. I do not think I will meet every single objection to these regulations, but I am reasonably confident that I have put together a package which will command the support of this Assembly. I certainly hope so.
Supplemental question, Deputy Ward?
Yes, thank you, sir. What I'm hearing there, sir, is perhaps that what we're going to see is a watered-down version of the landlord licensing system. Is the Minister happy that it's watered down enough? Or does he think he may need to add a little bit more H2O? So, thank you.
So I don't think I mentioned the phrase watered down at any point, and I wouldn't use that phrase to describe what I've done. What I hope I've done is provide some clarity, some simplicity, and also some a degree of consultation, which means that everyone involved will hopefully feel that they've been at least listened to and respectfully listened to, so that they may not necessarily get everything they want, but at least understand that their point of view has been considered.
Deputy Tadier?
In hearing all those objections, has the Minister heard any spurious objections? Can he tell us what those spurious objections might be? And can he tell us whether he's made concessions to those spurious objections in order to get this bill passed?
No, so I don't think there's been spurious objections. I think I try and listen carefully to whatever points of view people bring to the matter, and I think it's important to hear people, and I don't claim knowledge of every single set of circumstances, so I am happy to hear all representations, and I try not to categorise them into spurious and non-spurious. And I repeat, I do not think the regulations, when published, will show any sign of being watered down.
Supplemental question, Deputy Tadier?
The Minister will be aware that there are far more tenants in the island than there are landlords. Could he clarify whether the consultation that he's done and the representations he's received reflect that balance?
So I have looked in great detail at the feedback that has been received from all groups, particularly referring back to the historic situation where various groups were canvassed. And so I feel like the points of view that have been expressed from that side have been very well expressed and very well summarised in previous reports. And I do not anticipate objections from the tenants. My concern was to overcome objections from landlords, which and indeed from States members who have previously found it difficult to support these proposals. And so that is where I have concentrated my efforts.
So just for reference, that didn't address my question, I don't think.
I'm not sure there's much room for just for a reference. And did you have a question, Deputy Scott?
I did, on the right subject, sir.
Right. Let's see that now.
Thank you. Could I please ask the Minister, has he considered a blanket licence that perhaps would therefore can be actually provide the ability for licences to be revoked and therefore provide a cheaper way of actually allowing licensing without perhaps driving up the costs of housing?
So I'm not quite sure what the Deputy means by a blanket licence. I think I can say that when we introduce the scheme, the intention will be that anybody letting a property at the point of the scheme starting will automatically be licensed. And then after that, there will be a need to apply from that point on. So I don't know if that answers the Deputy's question, but that is what I understood it to mean.
Supplemental, Deputy Scott?
Yes, sir. So effectively, that will mean that landlords would be registering in order to receive a licence. Is that what I'm to understand? So this would be a way of ensuring that properties are registered and with all the landlords being licensed and that with the possibility of that licence being revoked. Is that how I should understand it?
So it's important to understand that it's the properties that are licensed, and it is a license to which people will apply rather than be applying to be on a register. Nevertheless, it will be a default outcome of applying for a license that we will effectively have a register of all properties that are rented in the island, and that will be a very useful tool in terms of enforcement of minimum rental dwelling, safe rental standards. And indeed, the whole point of a licensing scheme is to allow a flexible method by which minimum standards can be enforced, and indeed with the ultimate sanction being the possibility of withdrawing a license should improvements not be made as requested to meet the minimum safety standards.
Final supplementary, Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. In answer to a previous question, the Minister referred to his concerns about overcoming some of the objections that have been raised about this kind of scheme previously. So can he confirm for this Assembly what changes he has made in his attempts to overcome those objections? Has he been successful, or is it the case that in actual fact there is simply an entrenched opposition to any form of licensing that he as Minister is simply going to have to disagree with and ask members to disregard that entrenched objection?
So I can confirm that I will be bringing these regulations to the Assembly, and therefore there comes a point at which, yes, you have to accept that you may not persuade everybody, but you will bring them nevertheless because you believe it is the right thing to do. I really can't say much more than that. I can't remember the first part of that question.
It was about asking specifically what changes compared to previous iterations that he will be proposing in order to try to overcome some of those objections that have been raised.
So I think when the regulations will be published, which will be very, very soon now, I think the Deputy will be able to make his own comparison. I would rather not at this stage go into giving details on those which have not yet been fully shared with all relevant parties, including fellow ministers.
Very well. That brings questions with notice to an end. We now move to questions to ministers without notice. The first question period is for the Minister for the Environment, Deputy Rob Ward.
Thank you, sir. Jersey Oil and Gas Company, based in Jersey, are now currently looking for investors, a 30% investment in a new North Sea oil Buchanan field, which will produce around 30,000 barrels per day. The Minister voted against divestment in fossil fuels. How does this fit with our ambitions for net zero?
So my focus in the quest for net zero is to follow the carbon neutral roadmap, which aims to drive down carbon emissions in Jersey. That is something over which I have control, or at least I don't have control. I have a degree of influence, at least. And that is something that I think commands widespread support in the island. I have said over and over again in this Assembly that my aim is to hold together as wide as public support as possible for the quest for net zero. And by focusing on what matters to people in Jersey, and indeed what people's lives in Jersey, I believe that's best able to do that. So I do not feel that me making statements in favour or against various investments elsewhere is going to make any material difference, and therefore I refrain from doing so.
Supplemental.
Yes, thank you, sir. A statement that was clearly made by the Minister was to sign up to the Paris Agreement with the UK government. Now, the UK government providing subsidies for this company and allowing tax breaks in order to open up these new fields. Is it not the case that the statement to sign up to the Paris Agreement was exactly not what we need, but we should have led the way, as was suggested by this Assembly previously?
So I'm not responsible for the UK government's subsidies, and my own personal views on that, as I say, I don't feel are particularly helpful. Lecturing from afar is a very easy thing to do, but it doesn't actually achieve very much. I am focused on achieving what we can in Jersey, a job which is hard enough, without me taking on interests elsewhere.
Deputy Luce.
Thank you, sir. So the Island Plan forms the heart of Government of Jersey's long-term strategic framework and guides decision-making, performance review and improvement of Jersey's public service. But to allow time for conditions to settle after Brexit and the coronavirus pandemic, we currently have a bridging island plan that covers a shorter period from 22 to 2025. Does the Minister intend to come up with his new 10-year plan in 2025?
So yes, the Bridging Island Plan runs until then, and the relevant clause says that the plan should either be renewed by then or as soon as possible thereafter. My feeling is, I've expressed this several times, that there is no appetite in the island to have another island plan process during the course of this Assembly. And so I would plan to bring to set in train the processes for bringing forward a new island plan, but not to finalise the new island plan during this Assembly. And just to be clear on that, I do hope to bring forward greater clarity on that timetable by the end of by the time of the summer recess.
Deputy Scott. I beg your pardon, supplemental question, Deputy Luce. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister, with respect to the scheme to assist people in acquiring electric bikes, advise whether this scheme will extend to kits that actually enable manual bikes to be converted into electric bikes, and whether he has explored the advances in terms of other vehicles being converted as well?
Not sure about the second part of that, maybe come back to that. But on the first part, it's a good question. It was raised in social media, actually, last week, about whether or not the e-bike subsidy scheme should include conversion kits. I think we'll look at that. I think that's a good question. It's worth looking at. The point about conversion kits is that the ones certainly that I'm aware of sit around the £700 mark, which would not be appropriate for the current £300 subsidy, because it would have too big an impact on that purchase price. We'd be keen when we set those subsidies to set them at a level which incentivises purchase, but doesn't lead to the kind of perverse situation where people might buy something using that and then try and sell it elsewhere because they've made such a saving. So I think we have to calibrate that quite carefully, but it's certainly something I'm prepared to look at.
Supplemental, Deputy Scott.
So will the Minister be comparing the cost of such a kit with the cost of acquiring a new bike and the environmental implications with that? And also looking into the relative safety of the two types of transport?
So I'm not quite sure if we're talking about comparing kit converted bikes with electric bikes or electric bikes with normal bikes. In terms of electric bikes compared to pedal cycles, as no doubt members will know, electric bikes' electrical assistance is capped at 15 miles per hour. And so there is a degree in which the safety of electric bikes is maintained by that lower speed. So I think safety is always something we keep under review, but I haven't had significant concerns raised about the use of e-bikes in safety terms compared to pedal cycles.
Well, are there any other questions for this minister? Deputy Luce.
Thank you, sir. So there's been much made in the media recently of the difficulties in getting to 2030 and the banning of the internal combustion engine. Does the Minister think we should be pushing back that date to the mid-2030s?
So I think in the UK it's 2035. I would be very reluctant to do so because of the signal it would send. I do feel that we have a big job to do in terms of reducing dependence on the internal combustion engine. We will very shortly be announcing the first EV incentive scheme, which will hopefully go some way to closing the gap in price, which I know is a significant deterrent for people currently wishing to purchase electric vehicles. But I would be very reluctant at this stage to make that kind of commitment because of the signal it would send. I would much rather put in place our incentive schemes, which haven't yet begun, and see how much progress we can achieve before we throw up our hands and say that the target is too difficult.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Yes, thank you, sir. So one of the challenges is the number, especially in the UK, is the number of charging points for vehicles. Does the Minister feel that we're making significant or enough progress with charging points in Jersey? Specifically, does he feel we have enough fast chargers on the island?
So the definitions of fast chargers and so on are quite difficult to ascertain. I think Jersey Electricity say they have one super fast charger, but there are a number of other fast chargers. We're actually in a reasonably good place in terms of public charging points in Jersey. So electric charge, we have a much higher density per head of population and per road mile of public charging points than in comparable jurisdictions, quite significantly higher, I believe. And many of them are not yet fully used. So Jersey Electricity are able to provide utilisation figures for those, and many of them are not yet fully used. So there is considerable spare capacity within the network. Having said that, there is still a lot of work to do in terms of putting in place charging for private residences and in places where that infrastructure is hard to site. But I am somewhat reassured by the fact that we do have a relatively good public charging network, and therefore people should be able to find a charging point should they need one.
Any other questions for this minister? Guy Tarper, St Saviour.
Thank you, sir. Following on from the question by Deputy Luce, is the Minister aware that Germany has indeed pushed back beyond 2035 sales limit for internal combustion engines as long as the vehicles use a synthetic fuel, sir? Is the Minister aware of that?
Yes, sir, I am aware of that. I think it is of limited relevance here for the reasons I've already explained. I do think we need to put in place our incentive scheme and see what we can achieve. It's not, of course, just about electric vehicles. It's also about other forms of sustainable transport and, indeed, alternatives to vehicles altogether. And I think that is a huge task that we have set ourselves, but I would be very reluctant to water down our targets before we've given it a really, really good shot.
Supplemental question, Guy Tarper?
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister looking into the possibility of hydrogen-powered vehicles, sir?
So in a way, it's not up to me to look into the possibility of hydrogen-powered vehicles. I think that's really for car manufacturers. If by that he means in terms of how relevant they would be in the Jersey context, I have to confess that I feel that they are of relatively little significance in the Jersey context for one very particular reason, which is that we already have a decarbonised electricity supply, largely decarbonised electricity supply in Jersey. Therefore, we have a small island. And therefore, electric vehicles seem to me overwhelmingly to be the best non-carbon source of personal motor transport in Jersey. And I cannot see the argument for hydrogen, which is a process which involves considerable energy loss in the process of making hydrogen before it finally gets used in a car, why we would go for that less efficient process when we have such a good case study in the island for the use of electric vehicles. In general, hydrogen, I think, is best seen as an alternative fuel where there is no other alternative available. And in Jersey, that alternative is very much available.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has announced that he's deferring orders appertaining to the protection of trees for further consultation. Could he tell members which direction he's hoping to go with this to assuage the concerns of landowners and indeed tree surgeons? Thank you, sir.
So I was very clear when I announced that I was going to extend the consultation and indeed to engage in further conversations with the tree surgeon and professional gardener and other relevant parties, that we had that I had got the policy guidelines wrong. Therefore, it is quite clear that the direction of travel will be to make the guidelines less restrictive. They were too restrictive. And they would have caught too much of what would have been normal routine maintenance work within the framework of the planning system. That is not the intention. Therefore, the work now is to ensure that when we find definitions for routine maintenance work, that indeed capture what is routine maintenance work and make that exempt from the planning rules, while still making sure that there aren't loopholes and which can be exploited to carry on work on trees that might be, which might be legitimately require planning permission or notification, not just planning permission, but notification in some instances. So that is something which I'm very committed now to consulting with all relevant parties, and I will not bring in that order until I've satisfied myself that those concerns have been met.
I thank the Minister for the clarity. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Hall.
Thank you, sir. Given our carbon neutral roadmap, I just wondered what the Minister is thinking about car scrappage, because there are an awful lot of vehicles at the moment on the roads that will need to be scrapped if we're to go to electric ones, and I wondered what thoughts you'd had. Thank you.
So there's several different issues in there. You know, my focus is very much on carbon emissions reduction. And actually, in a technical narrow sense, a car that is not being used is not emitting. So I think the focus of policy has to be, given that we have limited resources to spend on carbon neutral, that this focus should be on the actual reduction of emissions. I agree that in many cases that would be helped if we were also, there would be other benefits if we also removed cars from the road, and indeed the idea of a scrappage scheme of taking one vehicle off and for a replacement electric vehicles and so on might further incentivize people to make that transition. But I do think the issues are slightly different, and so I will be focusing, I think we will be focusing as a ministerial team very much on the need to reduce emissions first, and the other benefits that might come from pursuing policies like scrappage will be considered as part of that overall mission.
Supplemental question? Coincidentally, that brings the time available for questions to this Minister to an end in any event. The next period of questions for the Minister for Home Affairs. Does anyone have any questions for the Minister for Home? Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister please explain the difference between a substance misuse strategy and a substance use strategy?
I thank the Deputy for the question. I think the first thing I should say is that the substance use policy is actually, it actually belongs to the Minister for Health as opposed to the Minister for Home Affairs. But in my view, I'm quite happy that we've moved away from a substance abuse policy to a substance use policy, because I feel that it actually acknowledges that the vast majority of the public do use substances, alcohol, nicotine, and drugs, be they prescription or controlled.
Supplemental question, Deputy Coles?
No, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for this Minister? If no one else has any, Deputy Farnell.
Can't let her off the hook that easily, sir. With the, I understand there's been a successful start to the admitting French visitors on the ID card, and I know there are. I'm stamping my foot. And I know there are restrictions around that ID card at the moment. Is the Minister contemplating perhaps lifting those restrictions or allowing more flexibility around access, perhaps for, say, longer than 1 day? Thank you.
I thank the Deputy for his question. Yes, I was delighted to welcome the French delegation who travelled on the first Montchil Express from Normandy last month using their carte d'identité. And I have to say the pilot has got off to a very good start. The Memorandum of Understanding seems to be working effectively, and certainly the shipping companies themselves are refusing boarding to people who do not have the appropriate forms of identity. As I said at the very beginning, this is always going to be a sensitive topic, and I need to make sure that we can maintain the integrity of our border as members of the Common Travel Area. If the pilot is successful, it will be finishing on the 30th of September. We will review it, and if we can be completely assured that everybody that has been attending using a carte d'identité has been properly managed and there have been no problems, I shall of course look at potentially extending the scheme.
A supplemental question? Right, Arbor Trinity.
Thank you, sir. If I could ask the Minister that last time she was in the drum for questions without notice, I mentioned the not inconsiderable costs that the parishes are put to provide the Tetra radio service to the Honorary Police. And I was encouraged with her answer, and I wondered if there had been any progress in that regard.
Thank you. Yes, after the Connétable of Trinity asked me the question, I directed officers to look at this further and to seek alternative funding mechanisms. I remain of the view that we need to ensure that we support our honorary police to deliver those vitally important functions in our parishes. To date, I haven't had a reply from States of Jersey Police. I did raise this with the consultants who were looking at the civil contingencies law and made sure that as part of their recommendations they look at how we achieve an island-wide system of emergency radio. So I undertake to provide the Connétable with an update as soon as I have one.
Further question, thank you.
Does any other member have a question for this Minister? Deputy Farnell.
Thank you, sir. Another welcome move recently made by the Minister was flexibility around work permits, and we've moved to, I understand there's more flexibility around a 3-year permit, sir, which is very helpful because most sectors of our economy are grappling with severe staff and skill shortages. So we are relying once again on imported labour, albeit this time properly controlled by permits. There are the two issues I'd like to ask the Minister about. Firstly, I wondered why there's a 3-year limit on these new permits. Would you consider perhaps extending that in due course, sir? And also, I understand there's a clause which requires those who have been working under a permit to leave the island for the length of time they've been working. So they've worked here for 3 years. They would have to leave for 3 years before coming back, rather than a year, which I think was the previous understanding. I just wondered if the Minister could explain the rationale behind that and ask whether she would consider reviewing those conditions in due course. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy for his question. The work permit policy is constantly evolving, and I consider cases put to me on their merits and with the island's needs in mind. As the Deputy quite rightly says, there is now an option for employers in certain sectors to employ work permit holders for 12 months, renewable on an annual basis for up to 3 years. We must bear in mind that temporary work permit routes are designed to be just that, temporary. And the requirement for the long period of absence is included to prevent someone from acquiring a sufficient continuous residence that they could make a claim that Jersey is their permanent home. Temporary work permits are expressly not intended to lead to settlement. They are for individuals to fulfil a temporary contract of employment, after which they must leave. The requirement for an absence period is one way in which the policy is designed to prevent settlement. Immigration legislation already dictates that a person who holds indefinite leave to remain or pre-settled status granted under the EU settlement scheme will lose those permissions if they're absent from the common travel area for a continuous period of 2 years, and a person with settled status under the EUSS will lose their status after a continuous 5-year absence from the CTA. So those are the timeframes that we've used to provide a guide as to how long an absence period needs to be to provide a sufficient break in residency so that a person could not claim to have made Jersey their permanent home, therefore justifying their settlement here. Evidently, we are now in 2023, so people will be having 3-year permits, so really can stay here up until 2025. As I said at the beginning of my answer, the work permit policy is evolving and things may be subject to change.
Supplemental question?
No, thank you.
Does any other member have a question for the Minister? If another member has a question for the Minister, then this period of questions is closed. The next Minister to face questions is the Chief Minister. Questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister explain whether or not there is any policy that she is aware of that would require senior government officials to inform a minister if a complaint has been received by a staff member regarding that minister?
So I'm not aware of that, although I would assume that that would be the case.
Supplemental question?
Thanks, sir. Can I therefore simply ask the Chief Minister if she is not aware and in this instance is having to rely on an assumption, could she double check and inform members whether or not that is definitely the case as soon as possible?
Of course, sir.
Any other questions for the Chief Minister? If there are no other questions for the Chief Minister, Deputy Farnham. Deputy Feltham, sorry. Just a natural reaction, yes. I feel it was a perfectly reasonable call on my part. Deputy Feltham.
Thank you, sir. Following on from my previous question, I'd like to seek to ask the Chief Minister for assurance that she has personally signed off as Chair of the SEB on the policies and the code of practice that have been issued to the public service, I believe in December.
Sorry, so policies and code of practice in relation to, I wasn't sure that that was clear.
No,
I can give an example. An example would be the resolving grievances policies for public servants.
So is your question, Deputy, that the Chief Minister signed off on all policies?
The ones that have been issued by the SEB.
During the currency of her...
Yes, that's correct.
I hope that clarifies matters.
So in the interest of always being as accurate as I possibly can be in relation to answers, the question is extremely specific, asking if I personally had signed that. And I'm afraid, sir, I could not recall at this particular moment whether those documents would have been signed by myself or the Vice Chair, who actually chairs the majority. Well, he chairs SEB meetings and often takes lead on SEB-related matters.
Supplemental question?
Thank you, sir. If the Chief Minister doesn't recall signing off on the resolving grievances policy for public services, does she recall reading it?
I will have read it at some point, sir, yes, if it was on the agenda.
Very well. Deputy Farnham.
Well, it's a bit quiet this morning, and the sun is shining, so I'm going to bowl an underarm to the Chief Minister, I think. Can I ask the Chief Minister what is the purpose of the Cabinet Office and how much is it costing to run annually? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm afraid I don't have the exact figure for the Cabinet Office, but it is, as the Deputy I'm sure will recall, a reorganisation of departments formerly in relation, for example, the Chief Executive's Office, the Department for SPPP. I can never remember all three Ps in the right order, and I think that they were changed to make matters worse at one time, and also what was formerly known as the Chief Operating Office.
Thank you, sir. I think that appears sensible if it's a consolidation of departments. In relation to the cost, if my memory serves me right, I think in the government plan there was a sum of about £60 million allocated to the Cabinet Office. I'm presuming that's not additional costs, that is just a consolidation of the costs of those departments. Perhaps the Chief Minister could confirm. Thanks.
That's right, sir. It is, as the Deputy rightly uses the word, consolidation, and indeed aimed at creating a more efficient organisation. Of course, the policy unit is a large unit, and also so is the people and corporate services aspect of that, because we employ a very large number of people, and therefore there is a significant body of work in order to look after all of those people and recruitment process.
Deputy Hart?
Can I ask a question relating to that, sir?
Yes, you can ask any question of the Chief Minister that's within the Chief Minister's portfolio, which is pretty well everything.
Thank you, sir. I was just wondering how this Cabinet Office relates to the Council of Ministers and then relates to the States Assembly. Thank you. So I'm just a bit, I just don't quite understand.
I'm grateful to the Deputy for the question, actually. It is a good question, particularly if we think about one minister, one department, which was a proposition adopted by the previous Assembly that was brought by Deputy John Young. If we think about the Cabinet Office is a structure within which there are a number of lines to different ministers. For example, the policy unit with housing, and that has a line to the housing minister. But I think in using that example, it identifies why there is perhaps a need to do some further and continuing work. And I think we have always identified that that was required in order to achieve the full alignment that was required by the previous Minister for the Environment. But the full intention is to get there, and this is actually an improvement in alignment, but more so directed at the management aspect of government business rather than the ministerial lines of accountability, sir.
Supplementary question?
Thank you very much. I think I probably need to discuss further with the Chief Minister. I'm still not quite sure how it relates.
If there's no question, thank you very much. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. Following up from Deputy Howe's question, could the Chief Minister just explain a little more in terms of this alignment and in terms of what's been advertised as the ministerial staffing of the Cabinet Office at the moment, how the alignment with the Home Affairs Minister works and the Minister for Environment, because I'm not particularly aware of seeing ministerial representatives in either of those areas in the Cabinet Office.
At the moment, sir, the Minister for Home Affairs and the Minister for the Environment have chief officers that run departments that have a direct line to those two ministers. Therefore, they do not sit within the current Cabinet Office.
Supplemental, Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. Is the Chief Minister therefore saying that the other ministers whose portfolios are represented in the Cabinet Office don't have direct lines within the public sector?
If I could just go back to my earlier explanation, which was that this was largely bringing together some of the management aspects, the Chief Executive's Office, the Chief Operating Office, and Strategic Policy, Performance and Population. Those are different areas of the organisation, and they sit underneath the Chief Executive's leadership. There are some areas, particularly policy, such as housing, that have lines to ministers. There are also some areas such as communications, which has a policy line to an assistant chief minister. And it's rather difficult to talk organograms in the Assembly, but I would be very happy to run a briefing for members if it might assist them in order to offer an opportunity to hear more about the working at the Cabinet Office, where we wish to see it go. And of course that will be subject to the interim Chief Executive and the role that they will come in to deliver to constantly assist us in evolving and improving the performance of our organisation.
Supplemental question, Deputy Scott.
Thank you. I thank the Minister for offering the briefing, and I, for one, would welcome such a briefing.
So no supplementary question. Deputy Taddy.
Thank you, sir. At the last sitting, I asked if the Minister could supply us with the date that she was invited to attend to meet the Estonian ambassador in London for a dinner. She said she would be happy to circulate that information, but doesn't seem to have done it yet. Is she able to enlighten us, or do I need to put a Freedom of Information request in?
I apologise, sir, if I have failed to do that. I was invited to a dinner at the residence of the Estonian ambassador on the 10th of March, and I accepted that invitation on the same day.
For completeness, would the Minister be able to circulate that invitation?
If the Deputy requires it, I will ensure it's done this time.
Current opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Could I ask the Chief Minister if she shares the concerns that have been raised by some previous members and some current members, whereby the Department of Infrastructure and Planning share one Director General, and this is or arrives at a potential for conflict or tension when certain decisions have to be made, and does she have any intention to do anything about this? Thank you, sir.
I thank the Constable for his question, and yes, indeed, he has identified one of the areas that requires some further work in terms of smoothing the lines of accountability, and that is one area where there is work to be done.
Supplemental question, Constable? Deputy Feltham.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister provide the Assembly with an update on the establishment and work of the Assistant Ministers Forum?
The Assistant Ministers meet, I believe, on a regular basis, particularly in advance of state sittings. That is something that the Deputy Chief Minister has been arranging and conducting those meetings with assistant ministers. It's an important forum for them to discuss any information that is generally helpful and to have a better insight into what is going on in different departments where they may not have a direct involvement.
Supplemental question?
Yes, could I ask the Chief Minister how any concerns, issues or anything like that that may arise from the Assistant Ministers Forum are then fed back through into the Council of Ministers?
That would be done as the Deputy Chief Minister sees fit. It would obviously depend upon the circumstances, what the nature of the concern was, and we have regular feedback sessions, political meetings amongst ministers so that we can conduct that kind of business.
Well, Deputy Hull.
Thank you, sir. I was just wondering, we had a very successful delegation from Estonia and the ambassador, and I wondered if the Chief Minister could inform us of the outcomes of this visit, please? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Deputy. So the particular focus when discussing matters with Estonia is, of course, one where we are very interested to learn from them about their digitisation of their public service in particular. We have much to learn from Estonia, which is a small nation, 10 times the size of ours, but has many similarities. And it was a very useful meeting, and we are looking to progress with the further digitisation of our public service so that we can enhance public use of our services, but also improve accessibility and also greater value for money.
A supplemental question, Deputy?
Thank you, sir. So whenever the Chief Minister is able, if we could be updated, that would be much appreciated. Thank you, sir.
That's a request of the Chief Minister, yes. Very well. Connie Tarbison, Saviour.
Thank you, sir. Further to the question regarding Council of Ministers v Cabinet Officer, in the last Assembly, I recall arguing vociferously, wish I could say that all ministers should have their own offices in the new States building, which, if you like, the new Cyril Lamarca House. Would the Chief Minister inform the Assembly that that is still the case,
sir? Thank you for the question, Constable. As the layout of the new Cyril Lamarca House was complete before we assumed office and that contract was well underway, there hasn't been an opportunity to fully engage with it, although I am looking forward to having a briefing in the next couple of weeks. It is my understanding that ministers will have their own offices in that building.
Supplemental question, Gwendolyn? Does anyone, any other member have a question for the Chief Minister? Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister believe that external factors that provide uncertainty to islanders leads them to substance use?
Well, sir, I'm not a health professional, and so my view would be one of a layperson, but one who has an aspiration for all islanders to lead a good quality of life and to thrive in our community. From the research that I've undertaken personally, I have a personal view that people sometimes abuse substances or use substances to ease any personal pain or strain that they may have. And the more that we can do to support islanders in leading a fulfilling and happy life, the less recourse they may have to the use of substances.
Supplemental question?
Yes, thank you, sir. And I'll use this word very carefully and very precisely. So would the Chief Minister agree that providing certain stabilisation factors in people's lives may actually help them with managing external stresses rather than using substances?
Forgive my ignorance, sir, but I'm not quite sure what the stabilisers might be. Forgive me.
Rent stabilisation, so people's rents are stable so they know what they're expected to pay.
Right, okay, sorry. Thank you, Deputy, for... Okay, I was following the former line of questioning, perhaps, which is what caused me some confusion. So I can understand, and I do understand, that the percentage of income that people spend on their housing, it is a matter of stress. Indeed, it's termed rental stress, I do believe, when it achieves a certain percentage of income. And that is something that we're all very keen to tackle. I know that the Housing Minister is very energetic in his work. But perhaps we politically take a slightly different approach to that of the Deputy and his colleagues, which is that we are more focused on supply and the impact, the positive impact that will have upon our housing market rather than other measures.
Does any other member have any questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. In the last quarter, does the Chief Minister believe she and her colleagues have promoted equality in the island or reduced it?
Sir, I hope that we have promoted equality in the island. We have seen the gender pay gap reporting. We have also taken leadership roles and from a gender-balanced Council of Ministers. We also have sought to support those who are less well off by bringing a mini budget. I'm just slightly hesitating because that may not have been in the last quarter, but in the quarter before that. But I think that those actions that we took in our early days identify our intentions to support all members of our society and to ensure that everyone can thrive within our community.
A supplemental question?
Yes, and could the Chief Minister indicate what actions have promoted equality in the island?
This quarter. So there is an ongoing programme of actions, and I think that we have continued to do that in a positive way.
Mezek?
Thank you, sir. Following on from that line of questioning, could the Chief Minister confirm whether her preferred method of reducing inequality in Jersey is focused on providing people with enhanced independent incomes, or is it through simply increasing benefits?
So I think that we identified our political approach through the mini-budget, which was to increase tax allowances substantially so that those who are earning low incomes do not pay taxes and therefore have a greater level of disposable income with which to make their own decisions.
Thank you, sir. Increasing tax allowances doesn't reduce inequality because those who are worst off are already below the allowance thresholds and those who are at the top have their tax liabilities capped. So could we infer from the Chief Minister's answer there that she believes that the solution to growing inequality is to tax middle earners more and increase the benefits bill for those with the lowest incomes, rather than to resolve the systemic issues in our economy which are causing growing inequality in the first place?
So we also raised the minimum wage considerably in the first months of this government, and I think that also identifies our approach, and we continue to ensure that islanders have the greatest potential to earn and to live their best lives.
Deputy Tadiu.
The Chief Minister spoke
Extremely
about
briefly.
A gender pay gap. Is she aware of whether an ethnic pay gap exists in Jersey, and if so, is she concerned about that?
So I don't believe we have those figures available, I'm afraid.
Is it something the Chief Minister would care to look into, given the drive for equality?
Whilst I sympathise with where the Deputy is coming from, and of course it would be interesting to have that insight, that would have to be balanced with the potential cost of achieving that. We have already made considerable investments in Statistics Jersey in order to achieve the gender pay gap reporting that we have benefited from and seen, and that would have to be a qualified decision, therefore.
Well, that concludes the period of questions to ministers without notice, and we now, nothing else arising under J or K, we move on to public business. The only item is the rent control measures lodged by Deputy Mezek, P18, and the main respondent is the Minister for Housing and Communities. Deputy, you've lodged an amendment. Did you wish to propose the proposition as amended?
Yes, please, sir.
Are members content that it's taken as amended? Yes, very well. Then I ask the greffier to read the proposition as amended.
The States are asked to decide whether they are of opinion that the Residential Tenancy Jersey Law 2011 should be either amended or replaced in order to A. Provide for rent control measures to be introduced, including but not limited to 1. Limiting rent increases to no more than once a year. 2. Requiring a minimum 3-month notice period before a rent review can be implemented. And 3. Capping the amount that rent may be increased in a rent review by a measure of affordability, such as the increase in the average earnings index or the average of the retail prices index over the 3 preceding years, or an alternative effective measure which the Minister for Housing and Communities may deem appropriate. B. Provide for the abolition of no-fault evictions by 1. Establishing open-ended tenancies as the default tenure, where notice to quit may not be issued to a tenant who has not breached their contract, except under defined circumstances as to be prescribed in legislation, and 2. Requiring enhanced notice periods for tenants based on how long they have lived in the property. C. Provide for the establishment of a body, such as a rent tribunal or housing commission, to adjudicate on disputes arising from rent control or breaches of contract which may necessitate the termination of a tenancy, and to request the Minister for Housing and Communities to bring forward for consideration by the Assembly the necessary legislation to give effect to these decisions by the end of 2023.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. And can I start, for the avoidance of doubt, to let members know that I am happy to take votes on each and every part of this proposition separately, if that's helpful. Sir, Jersey has a housing crisis. Anybody who is awake knows that, and it's a crisis which can not merely be measured in the objectively gathered and compiled statistics from Statistics Jersey, which show us things like the growing unaffordability of housing, both rental and purchase housing, that show us the levels of islanders living in rental stress, and shows us the effect of housing costs on the proportion of islanders who live in relative poverty, where we have greater rates of pensioners living in relative poverty than the UK, and housing costs being the #1 contributing factor there. But it's a crisis that can be demonstrated through the stories that we hear from those who we're close to. I frequently hear stories from people who I am close to and care about the growing despair that they feel about their future prospects in Jersey. I know people who I grew up with who have already left the island and more planning to leave the island because they, despite having done what they thought they were meant to do, which was to study hard, to get good qualifications, to come and get a good job, work hard at that and increase their earning potential, have found that the opportunities that they have to enjoy a happy life are denied to them because of the cost of housing, be that their lack of belief that they will ever be able to afford to purchase a house. So I have a very close friend who is a qualified solicitor who could not even afford a 1-bedroom flat in Jersey. Or those who know that if they were to persevere and try to live a happy life as a renter, like so many millions of people do across Europe, they know that they would not have a secure life there because of the constant threat there would be of facing a no-fault eviction at merely a few months' notice with nothing they can do about it, or to have their rent incrementally raised year on year, again, with nothing they can do about it. I find, sir, that I'm speaking to more and more people who I'd describe as pretty affluent, actually. People who may be in their late 50s, who own very nice homes themselves, but are scared for their children who they believe are on the brink of wanting to leave Jersey and denying them as their parents the opportunity to spend time with their children and perhaps even play a part in the upbringing of their grandchildren too, because their children didn't have the opportunities that they did. Many of these stories are heartbreaking, and time again, I find my email inbox full of individual cases that come to me of people who have suffered from some of the practices that are currently completely legal in our tenancy laws. So that housing crisis is not something that our community is silent about. There is no lack of commentary out there in the public, through the media, on discussion forums, and there's no lack of discussion in this assembly about that housing crisis. It continually is brought up. We talk about it a lot. There's no shortage of studies into that housing crisis. There have, in the last few years, been multiple reports and reviews into that crisis, which I'll refer to later in my opening remarks. And there have been no shortage of proposals to take action to deal with that housing crisis. And yet we find ourselves having taken no meaningful action in the last few years. There's been some tweaks which are positive, but no real systemic change to resolve our housing crisis and give hope to islanders that they can have happy and prosperous futures here, knowing that their homes are secure and affordable, be they homes they own or homes they rent. And many propositions have made their way to the floor of this Assembly to attempt to deal with them. And the proposals that I'm asking the Assembly to agree in principle today are not new proposals. Those are proposals that have been available on paper, having been produced and recommended by the Housing Policy Development Board in 2020, following an extensive exercise, examining the evidence, consulting directly with stakeholders before coming up with a Jersey solution for what action to resolve our housing crisis could look like. Not merely a copy and paste from another jurisdiction, but an approach tailored to our unique island circumstances. And yet, despite those proposals being available for the last 3 years, this Assembly has not once endorsed those recommendations. Those key recommendations being the legislating to provide for rent stabilisation in the private sector, the legislating to provide for open-ended, secure tenancies, and the establishment of a functional rent tribunal. Those proposals have not been endorsed by this Assembly, despite having been made in 2020. And we now find ourselves in May 2023 talking about the exact same proposals that have already been raised several times over recent years, now in the form of my proposition P18, and also in the form of the Housing Minister's white paper, where the proposals are almost indistinguishable. A couple of slight differences, but almost indistinguishable. And there's a reason that those same proposals on rent stabilisation, open-ended tenancies, and rent tribunal keep coming up time and time again. The reason is because they're the right proposals. And what the Assembly decides to do today won't change the fact that, having followed a wide-ranging, evidence-based approach in 2020, those proposals remain the right ones for Jersey and will continue to be, irrespective of what the Assembly decides today. But we have until now had only talk. We haven't had action. The law remains as it was passed in 2011. Tenants don't have greater security, despite us talking about wanting to provide them greater security for the last few years, and they don't have protection from unfair practices on rent increases, despite us having talked for the last few years about that. And so I think the reason that there has been only talk and rather than action is because every time there's been a debate on this subject in the Assembly, a coalition has been put together between those members who are against change with the members who are actually open-minded about change, but will say, no, not today, come back tomorrow when you've done some more work on it. Those who are open-minded about change, siding with those who are against change, giving us 3 years of nothing. So, knowing that there is a consultation going on now on the Housing Minister's White Paper, I ask the Assembly to form a different coalition today in support of those proposals between those who are in favour of actually taking action to improve the situation for renters in Jersey, with those who are open-minded about change and perhaps would like to see a little bit more detail later this year, and to not side with those who are against any change, who believe that the current legal framework is adequate, and who, if we listen to, we will continue to have more years of this housing crisis. So let me go through the proposals that I'm making in this proposition one by one, explain how they would work, explain where more work needs to be done, and explain where they fit into the consultation that is going on. So parts A, 1, 2 and 3 of the proposition refer to rent control. So the phrase rent control can mean many different things in many different jurisdictions. There are versions of rent control which are successful, and there are versions of rent control which are harmful and unsuccessful. The Housing Policy Development Board examined many different jurisdictions to see what models exist, what problems they have, and where some have been successful. And it concluded that a model that could provide net benefit for Jersey's community would be for third generation rent control. So that is not what some refer to when they say rent control, which is a government bureaucrat going around with a clipboard to every place of residence and saying this is what you're allowed to charge for rent. Instead, it's a system of making it compulsory in rental contracts that rent increases, when they are applied, have to be limited by some metric of affordability. That might be based on RPI, it might be based on average earnings index, it may be based on some alternative system. One that this proposition refers to is an average of RPI over several years to provide for cushion for tenants when we face times of high RPI like we're in now. So that is similar to what exists in some European countries. It's been examined by the Housing Policy Development Board and endorsed as the right system for Jersey. It's the system that many good landlords across the island already have built into their contracts, but it's not compulsory. And there are islanders who find year on year that they're faced with incremental increases to their rent that bear no resemblance to any affordability metric, and who are pushed further and further towards the breadline because they have no ability to oppose that and no agency to stand up for themselves when that is applied to them. So those who write to states members and say that rent control is a concept discredited by many economists are providing us with a commentary which is so oversimplistic that frankly it's wrong. There are many different types of rent control, and the one that this proposal makes is the one that the Housing Policy Development Board said after consultation and investigation was the right one for Jersey. And it's the one that has been, on paper at least, maintained by successive housing ministers. It's found in previous housing ministers' Fair Rents Plan, and it's found in the white paper that's been produced. In fact, it's in words that are almost identical to what's in this proposition, which is a pretty good coincidence because I hadn't seen the white paper when I put this proposition together. And I framed it in such a way to be open-minded as to exactly what that measure of affordability will be, because there are multiple ones that we can choose from, and from which a consultation may help us identify the most credible form for us to take. So the second part of the proposition refers to the abolition of no-fault evictions by establishing open-ended tenancies as a default tenure. The default tenure, not the sole tenure. That's an important point to make, which I'll come back to, and for providing enhanced notice periods for tenants, depending on how long they've lived in the property. Again, sir, this concept is commonly found throughout Europe. In fact, some European countries have much tougher regimes than what we're proposing. Systems where the children can actually inherit the tenancies of their parents. That's not what this is about. This is about ending no-fault evictions so that tenancies are presumed to be open-ended and will carry on until there is a reason for the tenancy to be ended. And those reasons will be provided for in, I presume, a schedule to the residential tenancy law once we've consulted further with stakeholders to work out exactly what those ought to be. But I can tell you what it won't include. It won't include complaining that there's mould growing on the walls of the bedrooms of your children. Whereas right now, a tenant can go to their landlord and say, I'm concerned about this. I'm concerned about the impact it's having on the health of my children. And that landlord, if they want, can issue them notice in writing the moment they get home and say, can't be bothered with the hassle of someone who will stand up for themselves, I'll just find someone else. Now, how many landlords in Jersey will actually react like that? I suspect very, very few. But you don't know that until you're in the situation, and that is what leads many tenants to be silent when they're facing these unfair conditions. What won't be included as a reason for an eviction or an end to a tenancy will be complaining that a rent review has been applied in a way that's not in line with the terms of the contract. There will be work to be done to establish what grounds there will be for ending a tenancy, and that is a legitimate area for consultation with those who own properties that they rent out. People who own those properties will want to know what the circumstances are where they will be able to end a tenancy and reclaim their property. And that will be things like they need to spend some money renovating it and it's not possible for the tenant to live there whilst that renovation takes place. Perfectly fair reason. It may be because the landlord is reaching an age where they'd quite like to downsize and free up their family home and move into property that hitherto was their investment property. Again, totally legitimate, and that's a grounds that exists in many European countries. That I would hope would be uncontentious. In fact, I would hope it would be so uncontentious, evidence for that being that the UK Secretary of State for Levelling Up and Housing, that well-known left-wing radical Michael Gove, is proposing doing exactly that in England, abolishing the Section 21 no-fault eviction procedure in their law. That has attracted universal support from political parties across the spectrum. The Labour Party have just announced that they're plagiarising that pledge. They announced that yesterday. The Conservative Party are in favour. All parties are in favour. A select committee has examined it and proposed a few minor tweaks, but is in support of that. And the third part of the proposition, sir, is to establish a body such as a rent tribunal or housing commission, call it what you will, it doesn't really matter, to adjudicate on disputes arising from rent control or breaches of contract, which may necessitate the termination of a tenancy. To have such a body in existence that both sides can feel they can go to and have confidence that they will get a just outcome without having to go to court and without having to worry about losing your home out of revenge if it doesn't go your way, or knowing that you will get a speedy process to reclaim your home when you have your property, when you have genuine concerns that a tenant is breaking their contracts, causing damage to it, or what have you. It's something that is fair for both sides. Those are the proposals, and members can take them or leave them, frankly. If you don't like those proposals, you don't want to see a reform of the residential tenancy law to introduce rent stabilisation, open-ended tenancies, and a new rent tribunal, then by all means vote against this proposition. Tell us that you're against it, and tell us why you're against it, and you'll be perfectly well entitled to your opinion. And if it loses on that grounds, it will be a fair democratic outcome, which I'll be really annoyed about, but that's life. But sir, don't vote against it, even though you like the ideas and the headlines that are proposed in it, because we're told that a consultation is going on and some version of the residential tenancy will be brought back in December of this year. That is a poor reason for voting against this proposition. It puts you on paper in coalition with those who are actually against these proposals, even if you're personally sympathetic to them, which is not a good look. But it does not detract whatsoever from the rest of the work that's going on. And in fact, I argue that it enhances what the Housing Minister is trying to achieve, because I'm genuinely worried that this will come back in December in some form of watered down version because of lobbying in the meantime, or it comes back as it is and it turns out the Minister's misjudged the feeling in the room and members vote against it then, and in the meantime we've wasted a year. And the reason that I worry about that is because it is exactly what happened in the previous term of office with the rented dwellings regulations, where the then Minister for the Environment and the then Housing Minister and successor Housing Minister too worked together, consulted widely, formed a proposition to introduce licensing for rented dwellings, brought it to the Assembly, and it lost. It lost with many ministers voting against it, having never raised an objection to it in Council of Ministers meetings. And we finished that term of office with no action on that whatsoever. A waste of time, a sad exercise of getting people's hopes up, only to have them thrown down when it lost. And all of that because of politics. Not because the proposition was a good one or a bad one, but because of political misjudgments in not starting the process by getting that clear commitment from members to say, yes, we support this, yes, we want it, go ahead and come up with the detail and come back, and we'll analyse it at that point, and if it meets what we said earlier on, then we can vote for it. Instead, we didn't judge the room and lost it. So I'm worried that if the Assembly does not say to the Housing Minister right here and right now, yes, we think you're on the right lines when it comes to rent stabilisation, open-ended tenancies and a rent tribunal, we want to endorse that now and give you our political commitment that we support those ideas. Now go away and come up with some of the fine detail and consult on it, great. Tell us what those genuine reasons for ending a tenancy will be. Tell us exactly what the affordability measure in rent reviews will be. And we can, in December, have greater confidence that what comes before this Assembly has a good political chance of succeeding, rather than having happened to it what happened with the rented dwellings regulations in the last term, where we wasted a whole lot of time and money. So I wrote to members over the weekend to address the comments that were put in the Housing Minister's comments to this proposition, and I hope they had an opportunity to read those, and I hope that sets things out and allows us to have this debate without having to worry about misinformation or misunderstandings of what the proposition asks. But to sum up what I said to members in that time, this proposition does not disrupt the ongoing process at all. It doesn't delay anything, doesn't stop anything from going ahead as planned. It enhances that process because it provides a political verdict here and now about whether this is the right way forward, and sends a signal out to those who might engage with the consultation, those who don't like these ideas and think they're bad ideas and want to oppose them. It says to those people, sorry, but you've lost the argument on this one. So instead of digging your heels in the sand, come and engage with us constructively and tell us what we might put in the fine detail of that to address as well as we can some elements of your concerns, but without giving in to you, because the states will have already determined the course of action here. In terms of the specific parts of this proposition, I would say to members, if you don't think that rents should be raised more than once a year, as the Housing Minister has said he agrees with that, I agree with that. I've not heard anybody say that there should be grounds in a tenancy for increasing rent more than once a year, then there can be no reason not to vote for Part A1. Part 2, which requires a minimum 3 months notice period before a rent review can be implemented. There's some disagreement over whether that should be 3 months or 2 months, and perhaps there's other versions. If you think 3 months is reasonable notice, there can be no reason for not voting for that part. Part 3, which asks for an affordability measure to be included to base rent reviews on, which leaves it still open for that fine detail to be determined, for an alternative effective measure, if one comes out of the consultation, can well be adopted and debated by this Assembly later, doesn't disrupt that. If you're in favour of that kind of measure, as already exists on a voluntary basis in many Jersey tenancies, then you can vote for it now, and you're not damaging the work going on in the consultation. You're actually helping by saying, this is the direction we want to go down. So Part B, which is the no-fault evictions part, asks to establish open-ended tenancies as a default tenure where notice to quit may not be issued to a tenant who has not breached their contract except under defined circumstances as to be prescribed in legislation. Well, we can come back to that legislation later on down the line if you've got particular concerns about what those grounds may be. But if you're broadly in principle of doing what we're proposing, what the Minister's proposing, what the Housing Policy Development Board proposed, what the Fair Rents Plan proposed, and what Michael Gove is proposing, although it pains me to say that, you can vote for it now, and it doesn't disrupt anything. In fact, it sends that message out to the public who may consider engaging with the consultation. Don't dig your heels in the sand on this. We are going to abolish no-fault evictions, but help us come up with those appropriate grounds so you feel like you've got ownership and management of your property. And lastly, sir, Part C, to provide for that establishment of a rent tribunal. It's been a fun journey to get to this point, where the wrong way forward came to this Assembly previously, even though the intentions were aligned. This allows us, for those who do want to see the establishment of a rent tribunal or a housing tribunal or whatever it is to be, to say, yes, we're in support of that principle, we can be united on that, and then await the detail in that residential tenancy law in December to see that fine detail. So one argument which has been pursued by the Minister in advance of this debate that has annoyed me has been the suggestion, again, that this is piecemeal legislation, when it is not. The white paper proposes things which are virtually in line with what is in this proposition,
and a few more things, like, for example, the regulation of social housing. So nothing in this proposition stops the Assembly and that consultation from pursuing some model for regulating social housing. I would argue that that can stand alone. Even if everything in this proposition were rejected, we could still do with some regulation of social housing, and that would be a beneficial thing. Or even if we forgot about that, the rest of the parts of this proposition stand firm. So it's not piecemeal, because that law can come in December in whatever shape or form it's to take, and we will have provided certainty early on for what we want to see in it. So, sir, in summing up, I want to reiterate to members that we have in this Assembly an ability to vote on propositions and tell our constituents what we think and how we seek to serve them. They really won't thank us for saying no to action now, no to telling them what we think and what we want, because we're too embarrassed to or too scared to because of some survey that's being done, which is what it is, ultimately, a survey, fine. And then come back in December when the legislation comes forward and then tell them what we really think, which is that we didn't agree with this from the outset, and throw it out then, having wasted time and having dashed their hopes like that. So I ask members, if you believe in rent stabilisation, open-ended tenancies and a rent tribunal, you have nothing to lose in voting for that today in this proposition and saying to the Housing Minister, we back you, get on with it, and let's see what the fine detail says later on down the line. But if we say, no, we're not going to nail our colours to the mast whilst that survey is being done, we face a greater risk of ending up with nothing at the end of it. If members want to end up with nothing, then that's politics, that's fine. But if you do genuinely desire to see change and want to see action taken to support renters in Jersey, now is the time to vote for that action and vote in favour of all parts of this proposition. And I make the proposition, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Is the adjournment moved?
So I wonder if members who've got a declaration to make might do that before the adjournment is moved for lunch.
Take up all the lunch.
Very well. Are there any declarations to be made in terms of those with an interest in?
Normally on these occasions, so you ask those to stand who are landlords and they're recorded.
We can do that. Very well. Those who are landlords, kindly stand. Referee will take a note of the names. Thank you very much.
Sir, can I clarify one? Sorry. Beg your pardon. Can I clarify one point? You asked if we were for register of landlords. I took it as meaning landlords in Jersey for the point of clarification.
Any amendments or any changes could only apply to property in Jersey, so clearly it's landlords in Jersey.
I will nevertheless let people know that I do own with my wife a property in London. Just for
Sir, a point of clarification, please.
From Deputy Mezek?
No, from you, sir.
Well, I don't give points of clarification. Do you want to know? That's not to say you can't ask a question.
Can I ask a question then, sir, please?
Please do.
I'm also a tenant, sir. Does that balance my debate? I have one unit let out and I rent a unit.
I don't think that you need to make a declaration.
Nice try, sir.
Thank you. Very much, Deputy Sutton.
Sir, could I just question the nature of the interest involved? Are we talking about direct pecuniary interest in that it will affect the results, the income from property, or are we talking about members actually speaking against or whatever in one direction, but being able to
I don't
vote?
think, Deputy, a decision in principle to bring in regulations, the details of which are still to be considered and discussed, even if passed, can be a direct pecuniary interest.
Sorry, sir. I've got a quick point of order on that as well. I'm just confused why tenants who would have a direct or an indirect interest in these propositions wouldn't want to declare. And I think previously, the last time we debated this, they were declared. So I'm just wondering for a ruling as to whether tenants who are affected by fixed-term tenancies would be, and rent rises would be worthwhile declaring an interest for completeness.
Well, I certainly don't see any harm in such a declaration being made, as it's not going to disqualify anybody from speaking. Those who are tenants who may benefit or otherwise from a fixed alterations to fixed-term tenancy, kindly show.
So just to clarify, I am a tenant, but my contract is as such that I won't benefit from this because I already have a very good contract.
Right. Well, in which case it's those whose interests may or may not be affected by what is proposed in principle. Kindly show. No? Very well. Is it
important? Sorry. So is it important to read out names because there was a real discrepancy there between a number of landlords and tenants in the Assembly?
No, I think it's been noted by the greffier, and that's it. No one is disqualified from speaking, and everyone here knows where the interests potentially lie. So I don't think that it's necessary to read names.
Sir, I beg to differ. It's good that it's noted, but this is a democratic chamber operating for the benefit of the public. The public should know what has been noted.
Well, the position is that any member of the public who is sufficiently interested is capable of watching this live. Anyone who's interested is capable of reading about it thereafter, although possibly that's true. Very well. I will reflect on that over the luncheon adjournment, and if I take the view that names should be read, then that'll be done after the luncheon adjournment. Very well. Is the adjournment proposed? Yes. The Assembly stands adjourned until 2:15.